Bernard Cole ahead of the breakaway riders. The first category climb today, 3 of them, 15 points on offer for the first man over the top for each of those 3. 15, 13, 11, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5 respectively for the first 8 over the top. And there is Michael Rasmussen, and right ahead of him for Discovery Channel looks to me like Sergio Paulino. Yes, it is Paulino, latching onto the back wheel there of Xureka of the Euskaltel squad. It's the first time we've ever seen him mixing it up here in the Tour de France. David Arroyo, very fine climber, sitting on the wheel of Rasmussen there. 2 minutes and 28 is the gap from Bernard Cole back to the main peloton, and that man Michael Rasmussen keen to get extra points for the mountains classification. And Juan Miquel Micaro is leading this little group of riders up through the stragglers, still from the breakaway, up towards the front. Stefan Joubert being brought back by Marcus Bergard on the front of the peloton. A lot of work today has been done by the Rabobanks to prepare things for Michael Rasmussen. Peter Wiening was on the front for the best part of 50 kilometers up and down. There is the Rasmussen.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. British is joining. Stop talking, please. Don't talk. And you again. Thank you.
Well, welcome to those of you joining us from British Eurosport live here on stage 8 of the Tour de France. Le Grand-Bornand to Tignes, 165 kilometers in total, and 3 first category climbs. You are joining us halfway through the stage, roughly, on the first of those huge giants of the Alps to be crossed, the Comet de Roselin. 19.9, the best part of 20 kilometers. An average gradient of 6%, but it's tougher at the start and at the back end, and as a flat in the middle. Slightly runs downhill, in fact, after kilometer 12 of this climb, so it's ramped in 2 places. The biggest gradient, 8.5% at this early part of the climb. And the course absolutely packed today, all the way up to the finish here at Tignes, where we arrive for the first time. Let's just have a quick look at the situation at the moment. A group of 19 riders went to race, driven on by Stefan Schumacher. For a long time, they didn't have more than 4 minutes, though, and the peloton had been dragging them back bit by bit by bit. One of those breakaway riders was this man here, Bernard Cole. He has decided, the young Austrian, the former Austrian road race champion, to pull something out of the bag now, because he's away by himself at the front. He's got a gap over 2 riders who are chasing him hard, Christophe Moreau and Antonio Colom, the Crédit Agricole Astana riders. Not quite sure how far back they are. I would guess about 15-20 seconds back, and then maybe a little bit more, in fact, back to them. Then another group has moved up through the breakaway riders. We'll deal with them in a second, because we're bound to see them. The rest of the breakaway now splintered. They included José Van Gutierrez, Michael Rogers, Jens Vogt, Mario Arts, Stefan Joubert, Gorka Vertigo, George Hincapie, Thomas Vogler, Christian Moreni, and Frederick Willems. They also included José Luis Arrieta, who's even further back now. Stefan Schumacher and Benoit Vaugrenard, they have gone off the back. And the peloton is, as you can see, 2 odd minutes back on Bernard Cole at the moment. Now, a group of riders have come out of the front of the peloton and rode through the remnants of the breakaway. David Arroyo of Case Japan, Rabobanks, Michael Rasmussen, the Euskaltel rider, Xureka, Xureka, Sergio Paulino of the Discovery team, and the Agritubel rider and former winner here in the Tour de France, Juan Miquel Micaro. Some of these original breakaway riders, Jorge Azanza being swept up by the peloton now. It's being controlled, the pace, by T-Mobile. Marcus Burkhardt is on the front. There's Valverde in the center of your shot. And it looks like Wiggins right behind him. For Cofidis, the pace being set at the front by T-Mobile. They, of course, have the yellow jersey at the moment. Earlier on, it was the Rabobank. Here on stage 8, Stefan Schumacher, one of the original breakaway riders, slipping down the field now as the peloton sweep up the remnants of a 19-man breakaway, and a group of riders have gone away from the middle of the peloton, riding past them. Arroyo, Rasmussen, Chureka, Paulino and Mercado. This is the first of 3 huge giants today. 1,967 meters tall, the Comé de Rosellas, 20 kilometers of climbing, and it's in 2 ramps basically, both of them pretty nasty. 8.5% is the steepest gradient in percentage terms you get at the foot here of the Comé de Rosellas, but it does have a downhill section in the middle. Then they run down into the valley to Bourg Saint-Maurice and straight up into the Mont Hauteville. The Hauteville, not so much of a steep climb, 15 kilometers long, 4.7 average, and quite steady all the way up. But the descent is pretty nasty. Lots of broken tarmac, lots of twists and turns. Into the valley then, they're still at over 1,000 feet when they get to Saint-Foy. And into Tignes, finally for today. 18 kilometers of climbing to Monte de Tignes. 2,088 meters up in the basking sunshine. And already we've seen Michael Rasmussen active today. There are 15 points for the first man over each of the first category climbs, remember, and that's his goal, to mass points for the mountains classification. And now it's time for somebody like Rasmussen to shine.
Yes, well, of course, we're going to see him shining, and he's definitely gone about it quite early. The very minute there was a move on the Cornet de Roseland, he was with those guys, and we see he's with, you know, another number of riders. Paulino was there, Mercado, of course, Arroyo, all good climbers, and some very good climbers. So, and they're picking up a lot of the guys who were up there in that original 19-man breakaway. Miller, of course, which was another one who was up there, who was also, I don't know if he eased up because the break was being controlled there by the T-Mobile team, and maybe he decided there were no way they were going to go on, and it was going to be difficult for him to stay up there anyway in the final. But if he was going to be pulled back in the final, what's the point of riding all day out front? So maybe it was a tactical decision for Miller, but certainly I think you know, we're going to see a lot of action now, because of course the Rabobanks have been riding, so they've controlled the race as well quite a bit. So interesting to see now what the other favourites will do. I think we will see certainly a battle on some of these final climbs of the day, because another 2 very big ones after this to go with the finish here in Tignes.
And look at Michael Rasmussen putting the pressure on, and already one of the riders in that group, Churuca, Ahmed Stuga, being distanced. Arroyo and Paulino staying on the wheel just about of Michael Rasmussen as he comes up to a group of those riders ahead of him who were in the original breakaway. David Miller, incidentally, had a bike change at some point, so when you do see him, he's riding one of the black, as per normal, Scott Addicts instead of the white one. Oh, just look at what happens when Michael Rasmussen turns up the wick. The riders who went away with him, not a chance. And there's just a great scramble to get onto the rear wheel of Rasmussen. It'll be interesting to see how many people stick there.
Well, it'll definitely cause a lot of damage in that group of Rogers. We see there also Big George Hincapie, and you know, he immediately when he came to him, of course, he just upped the pace a little bit more, and he's certainly going for big time today. And it'll be interesting to see now how many can hang in his wheel, because definitely there will a lot of these riders that were up there in the break originally will have problems following the pace set by Rasmussen.
It's Bernard Cole out ahead at the moment, though, the Austrian. He's been touted as a big talent, is Bernard Cole.
And here we go.
Look at it, all splintering to pieces. George Hincapie and Jens Vogt, that typical style of his that he has, gripping the bars, just bent at the elbow and pumping around those big gears is Jens. And look at the damage. The group that was riding around together, Christian Moretti has gone past, and they were riding around together. Suddenly it's all split to pieces as Michael Rasmussen has come up to him, and a lot of people have tried to stick on the wheel straight away. Stefan Joubert is that one of the men who's managed to stick with him, the AG2R rider. Michael Rogers just ahead of Rasmussen, so big damage done there. Maybe Rasmussen's not so bothered, I think, about what damage he does to everybody else, but Rogers will be keeping a wary eye on Rasmussen. We haven't mentioned Rasmussen a lot. I mean, obviously that's Christophe Moreau, by the way. His aim is to get the mountains classification jersey again this year if possible, but he came pretty close to, apart from the disastrous time trial, he came pretty close to podiuming a couple of years ago, Sean, with such an open tour this year, and two of the big favourites, particularly Andres Clauden and Alexander Vinokurov, possibly injured, possibly not in the best of shape. Does he have a chance of podiuming again this year?
Well, if you look back at 2 years ago, of course, I think the riders and the teams underestimated him. He was new on the scene, really, and I think he was allowed to do breakaways a number of times. And last year, he got into big breakaways, but he was a long ways down the general before he was allowed to do that. So I think this year, once again, he'll not be allowed as much as he was 2 years ago, because he's a danger one. And certainly for a podium place, it's very possible, but I think he will be a much more marked man, so it's going to be difficult for him. But when he arrives in the mountains, you know, he can do so much damage, and he can take quite a lot of time in the mountains. And if he does in the mountaintop finishes, well then, you know, he could put a lot of time out, but he has to put an awful lot out to be able to stay up there in the time trials, because that's where he's going to really suffer big time.
And the time trials this year, long ones, so not easy for Michael Rasmussen. Mike, this is how it looks on the GPS. Now it's all splintered to pieces.
Yes, indeed. Well, number one, of course, on your map, as we just zoom in a little there, represents our leader, Bernhard Kohl, the Gerolsteiner, who's been on his own up front for some little time now. You can't quite see number two because there's not much of a difference between him and Antonio Colom of Astana. The Astana rider not too far behind number one. Number three represents the Rasmussen group, although not much of the Rasmussen group left now. It's pretty well just Rasmussen, one or two others clinging to his back wheel. And number five represents the yellow jersey group, Gerdemann, the hero of yesterday. And that group, it has to be said, is slipping a little further behind at the moment. The danger man has to be Rasmussen.
Looking at the back of the peloton there, and we have a single shot of Alejandro Valverde, and suddenly the thought flashed across my mind, my word, is he being distanced? But it looks like he's just piano, Sean, at the back there, just keeping it under control.
Yes, well, he's sitting on the rear, which is a place you know, not expect him to be, but I don't think he's under any pressure here. He seems to be quite comfortable, and maybe he's going to call the car. Of course, there's quite a few of the Case de Pang riders dropped already, but there's other ones out the front, as we see with Rasmussen, but they are also getting dropped out of that group. So maybe he's trying to get to the car and get some fresh drinks here, but he doesn't really look to be suffering too much at the moment.
Nice shot of his bike there. We had a question the other day from somebody who was saying, is he still riding the Pinarello Dogma with the magnesium frame and the carbon rear end and front end? That's a Pinarello Prince he's riding there, as you can see, all carbon frame, carbon Dogma fork, obviously, or carbon fork. But that is definitely the all carbon Prince, and that's what the whole of the team are on now. So as far as I'm aware, everybody riding carbon this year. Bernhard Kohl is certainly having a good old go. He's turning a high cadence there and really pushing on. 3 minutes and 17 seconds is the gap between Kohl and the peloton at the moment. Bernhard Kohl at 4 minutes and 31 in the GC. Just behind Marcus Foffen, his Gerolsteiner teammate, and just ahead of Juan and Miguel Mercado, who was in that Michael Rasmussen group, but has been shelled. So Rogers staying with Rasmussen at the moment. This is Colomb coming up to the back wheel of La Marvelle. They are trying to track down Bernard Cole at the moment. Antonio Colomb is, I think he was ahead of La Marvelle actually, and La Marvelle has now gone past him. And Le Marvelle, a very fine rider, is a winner of the Tour de l'Avenir in the past, and former Francis du Jour rider. And Le Marvelle goes past Antonio Colomb. He is the next man in line then behind Bernard Cole. Riding well. Had a terrible accident, I seem to remember, did Le Marvelle a number of years ago, and did well to come back. Cole looking impressive at the front, but he's made his move very early, and Colomb comes back to him as it gets into this flatter section. He's made his move very early. He's took two big mountains to get up.
Yes, he certainly has made it very early, and I'm surprised that, you know, tactic-wise in the team that he was allowed to do that, not stay with a number of riders, because, you know, there's quite a few guys, very good riders, as we see here, Marvelle, Cole. If you could get those guys working and get a group maybe of 4, 5, 6 riders. Of course, in the beginning, the group 19 riders, and then it was down to 17, much too big, because there's always riders who want to sit on the rear, and it just really messes up the pace and the group up front. But, you know, to go away at this time, because when we get to the top of this climb, there's still 65 k's to finish and 2 big first category climbs, and, you know, the final one to the finish here, so it's a long ways to go, and he certainly needs to knock back maybe and wait for the 2 guys who are chasing it. It would be definitely a better situation with 3 up front, because a long ways to finish 65 k's with such a difficult terrain ahead.
Pachivila in the middle of your shot, and is it little Cardenas? Yes, it is Felix Cardenas, the Colombian, signed by Barlow World, really is their star climber. Hasn't featured much in any of the smaller climbs. He's in towards the front a little bit, but seems to drop back fairly quickly. And one of the quick step riders coming across, Juan Manuel Gárate, is it? Looks like him. Gárate has already said he wants to do something in the mountains today, or wants to do something in the mountains classification competition. Michael Rogers, the best placed man, up ahead of the peloton. 4 minutes and 3 seconds is his distancing of the peloton. Well, that's how far he is from the yellow jersey. Linus Gerdemann, his teammate, holding that today. So at the moment it's Bernard Cole at 4:31 in the GC, who is out ahead of the peloton by about 3 minutes 20 seconds now. Then Christophe Moreau and Antonio Colomb. And then back to the group of Rasmussen with David Arroyo in it as well, Michael Rogers and Stéphane Joubert hanging in there. Joubert, one of the elder statesmen now of the peloton as well. 3:23 is the gap from Cole, as you can see. 11 seconds back to La Marvelle and Antonio Colomb, so they're doing a very good job. It looks like Jean Gadret right at the back for the AG2R squad, just hanging in there. And there's Bradley Wiggins pushing on, doing very well indeed. Just behind him is Konstantin Setsu of the Barlow World squad. Setsu, the Belarusian, who did pretty well yesterday, attacked out of the peloton, and then it was his teammate Soler Hernandez, who came through. Le Marvelle has got up to Bernard Cole here on Race Radio. Mikel Astaloza now jumping out of the peloton and launching himself forward. Everybody has some sort of aspirations to do something today. Felix Cardenas, Pachivila, and moving on now, Alberto Contador joining them as well. The young man from Spain who won Paris-Nice earlier this year, in with a shout of a very high placing, and also, of course, the young riders jersey as well. This is the Rasmussen group. Michael Rogers And Stéphane Joubert and David Arroyo, they're trying and succeeding in moving up now to Christophe Lamavel's group there on the left-hand side. Lamavel, Cole and Antonio Colom. This is going to become a group of 7 very shortly. 70 kilometers to go. They've still got some way to go to the top of this Comé de Roselin. And then they plunge down into the valley towards the Monte de Hauteville, which is a nasty descent on the other side, and straight up into the Monte de Tignes, which is just a long, gradual, steady drag, nearly 19 kilometers of such. Right, Michael Rogers climbing well, Sean, at the moment is Rogers.
Yes, well, he certainly is. We see that when he came out of the bunch, he came across, you know, very strong and very comfortable. You know, the ones up front, Cole is, you know, really working at Lamavel, and Cologne also, you know, giving it quite a big effort. But Rasmussen certainly, you know, injecting a lot of pace when he arrived to the group of Rogers. And as we can see here, this is certainly going to, you know, put a bit more energy into this group. And it will be interesting now to see if they can hold the gap or will it grow out. And the T-Mobile team are doing a very good job, you know, for quite a long time there. They have been riding and controlling a bit, although they had quite a lot of support from the Rabobanks, because Rabobank team, of course, you know, had really nobody up there. And with Rogers, with Rasmussen up the road now, I think they will have to do a bit more maybe in T-Mobile if they want to control this one, because it's definitely going to go out, because with Rasmussen, and I think the other riders will also, you know, start working well together.
This is the yellow jersey and how they stack up at the moment. Mike, back in Paris.
Well, it's how they stack up in recent years in their debut season. It's amazing how many times a rider does come to the Tour de France for the first time, David, and succeeds in getting the yellow jersey. Linus Gerdemann did it yesterday. And of course we've had 2 Brits in the last several years, Chris Boardman and David Miller, taking the yellow jersey on their debuts in the prologue. In fact, that's happened most times. Fran Cancellara debut in 2004, he took yellow by winning the prologue. So too did David Zabriskie in 2005. The other exception to that, in as much as not winning the jersey by winning the prologue, Linus Gerdemann did that yesterday, was Ivan Gotti back in 1995, who took the yellow jersey, if I remember rightly, when we got to one of the first mountain stages, just as indeed Linus Gerdemann did yesterday.
That's a great shot, isn't it? Down into the Lac de Roselin. The peloton winding its way along the side of the lake. That road would have been pretty much dirt track up until the early 1960s, and so many of these alpine climbs were exactly like that. I think it's a testament, as yesterday when we went over the big mountain at Col de Colombier. It wasn't until 1960 that we were able to go over it with the Tour de France. It was still such a small and unmade road that the Tour de France caravan and all the riders were just not capable of getting over it. So it just shows it wasn't so long ago that these roads were opened up, certainly well after the Second World War. Arroyo sitting in the group with Rasmussen. This is a bit further down the hill. Big George just going to have to take his own time. Moreini at the back there, the former Italian champion. It's nice to see Stéphane Joubert up in the front group. The best, I think the best result he's had this year was a top 5 on one of the stages in the Tirreno Adriatico, but he did get second in a stage in the Tour of Limousin last year, certainly, and that's pretty tough. It's all rolling things, and there's not much in the way of big climbs. This is the pursuing group, bit down the hill. Christian Moreini at the back here, just doing his own thing, just hanging in there. That's good for him. He's turned himself into a good all-round rider. Was more known as a fast roadman with a good sprint on him, first of all, but he has managed to turn himself into a good attacking rider for all sorts of terrain. And Christian Moreini doing very well for his French équipe. So the situation today, as it started, was with Stefan Schumacher, in fact, from Gerolsteiner, who decided that enough was enough and the brake had to go away eventually. So he was the one who worked hard to make it get off the ground, and he took 19 riders with him. That's whittled right down now, and in fact there's only a handful of riders up at the front who have managed to stay away. Bernard Cole, Christophe Moreau, Antonio Colom in the original break, and then Michael Rasmussen, as he saw the breakaway falling apart on the lower slopes of the Comé de Roselin, has ridden up. Oh dear, that is Christian Moreau. Now, we were just talking about him doing a... Whoa, hang on a minute, what happened there? Oh my word, he just seemed to topple over for some reason. Well, how strange. I think maybe the chain came off, or he was trying to grab a gear and didn't quite get it. Allowed him to put a little bit of a wobble on at slow speed, and he just touched the rider in front of him. That's unusual, but thankfully no harm done. He got his chain back on, and Moreau will just try and work his way back up to this group to stay at that pace. Unusual, but there we go. Well, as you can see, we're in the Alps, and that means Camper City. They are everywhere today. When we drove the course, there were certain sections of it we just said, look, you know, we're going to get off and get on the motorway and then pick it up again later, because you can get stuck behind one of these camper vans. And I've got nothing against camper vans, I have a large one myself, but you can get stuck behind them on the very sinuous roads in the Alps, and it could take forever to get up or down. And when you're rushing around to try and do a job of work, that could not be so good. So, Christian Moreau gets back onto the rear of this little chasing group, the Hincapie group we're going to call that. This is the Rasmussen-Rogers group. Up ahead, we've just got a flick of them. And then back down towards the peloton. And you can see Christophe Moreau there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 back with Wegmann on his shoulder at the moment. Cedric Vasseur is the man up towards the front. Looks like Bonatti as well riding on the front. Not a place you'd usually expect to see him, but there he is. Sylvain Calzati for AG2R. Behind Fabian Wegmann is the current mountains classification leader, Sylvain Chavanel. And the yellow jerseys just lurking off our shot. Linus Gerdemann with the all-yellow helmet. Wonderful to see a young rider take the yellow jersey on his first Tour de France. There is Dario Cioni shepherding Karel Evans for Predictor Lotto. Evans, who went over in the front group in very good shape, has Cioni and Horner, Chris Horner, for his domestiques here for the mountains. And Horner seemed to be comfortable yesterday. Sean?
Yes, well, he certainly did. When we see him in our shot, he seemed to be, climbing quite well there. And of course, he's, especially here to look after Karel Evans, and in the mountains, he's a good climber. Maybe not, a great climber, but he can hang in there and for a long, long time. And of course, we see in the bunch there, we see Bonatti, we see Isabel is in there as well. So that tells us the pace is not really that real high in the bunch, and it is dropping down. We see the gap there is growing out. And as I talked about, I think up front they're starting to walk better in the Rasmussen group, and it's interesting to know who's going to take up the chase, because T-Mobile have got Rogers up there, so they were riding a bit with Rabobank, but Rabobank has Rasmussen up there now, so it's going to be difficult. Who's going to take up the chase? Who's going to control the race from within the bunch?
And this is how the breakaway looks, just as Sean was saying. It's growing, Mike.
It certainly is, and I think that's primarily due to Messrs Rasmussen and Rogers. All credit to Michael Rogers, David, because he has been doing just about as much work on the front of that lead group as it is now as Michael Rasmussen has. And as you can see, the yellow shows that we are going up and up and up. The lead is now well over a minute as they get nearer to the top of the first of these 3 first category climbs to be tackled here today, the Comé de Roselin.
Well, is Rasmussen just getting up towards the front for his mountains classification points, or is he really after a victory? Last year, remember, won the stage 17 from Bourg d'Azon to Tuzier. The year before, he won the stage 9 to Mulhouse, where you remember they dropped down and he just powered his way towards the finish. And that was, as Sean was saying, the year that everybody gave him a little bit more leeway than perhaps he would be entitled to these days, and set himself up for a tilt at the podium later on. And who couldn't forget, or who could forget, should I say? I'm sure Michael Rasmussen could forget the disastrous final time trial in that 2005 Tour de France for Michael Rasmussen, where he had at least 2 bike changes and fell off 3 or 4 times. And it just all got to him in the end. He had to really pull the stops out. Not a time trialist by nature, as you could see by his performance today. Before that, his best performance had been a stage in the Dauphiné Libre, but we mustn't forget that he was a world mountain bike champion back in the late 1990s, and he's been both a senior and junior world mountain bike champion, and then made the switch to the road. By the way, Rasmussen, lots of Rasmussens, professional, not all related, I have to say. I can think of a few off the top of my head. Alex Rasmussen, Dennis, there was Jakob, and my favorite one, Flemming Rasmussen. They're all Danes, so a pretty common name in Denmark. So here is the Hincapie group, as we're calling it at the moment, with Sergio Paulino on front at the moment, the little Portuguese setting the pace for this group. And this will be the way it is for a lot of the day until we get towards Tignes, I would think, Sean, in little groups that have to ride at their own pace, picking up riders where and when they can, with the lead group not being allowed too much leeway, with people like Rogers and Michael Rasmussen ahead of them. The peloton will let those groups ride at their own pace until such time as they think it's safe to reel them in, or they need to reel them in. There's some welcome shade under the huge, massive outcrop here. There's the peloton, and all the attendant cars wind their way up the Comé de Roselin. Is that going to be the way of it, Sean? We've now got 4 or 5 groups on the road. They're just going to stick at that pace until the next climb, at least.
Well, I think there's certainly some teams who do not want to stick at the pace, but they're in a situation, you know, do they take it up now or wait until later? Because we've seen the gap is grown, you know, well outside of 4.5 minutes for the leading group of Rasmussen and Rogers. But then with the chasing group, you know, with Hincapie, and we see Paulino, which was at 1:13 at the moment, so they're losing a bit of ground to the leaders as well, because they were at 50 seconds some time ago. And certainly in the bunch, you know, the problem is the teams who are represented up there, and the big teams who have somebody up there, they are not going to ride. Of course, Rabobank have Rogers, Rasmussen up there, T-Mobile with Rogers up there, so they're certainly not going to, you know, do any chasing now. And of course the Predictor Lotto team, they're a team who hasn't got anybody up there at the moment, so they're the ones who should be riding. But I think we see them, they're waiting there. There's a few of them up there in the front of the bunch, but as yet they're not taking up the chase. But they're going to have to do something later, because I think T-Mobile are going to play the card of Rogers at the moment, because with the race leader, of course, with Gerdemann, it's not sure that, you know, how well he will ride in the final climb of the day, or even the second last climb of the day. So they're going to play a bit safe and play the cards Rogers, which is normal.
Yes, just showing that there are more things at stake at the moment. There's nice to see a Union flag on the side of the road, and we passed a whole load of riders from Doncaster Wheelers earlier coming up the mountain here at Tignes. A young lady who said, come on, you've only got one more mountain to go, and she said, can I hang on, please? It would have been a bit difficult for 18 kilometres. I hope they made it towards the top. And we didn't see them earlier, but I'm sure they did. If you're watching Eurosport somewhere in a bar down in Tignes itself, which is below the ski station here, it was good to see you. If we catch up with you later, perhaps we'll buy you a drink. This is the main bunch then. Everybody then quite happy to stay here and look at each other. The real big favourites. Still not much more news on Vinokurov and Claudin. Maybe they're suffering at the moment. They managed to hang into the front group yesterday. I think it was a little bit uncomfortable for Vinokurov towards the back, but they only have this day to go until the rest day. And then, of course, they will have to reassess.
Yes, well, of course, Vinokurov, stitches in both knees and stitches in his elbow. It's certainly going to be sore in the first days, and we're talking about if he gets through today and not lose any major time to the other big favourites, well then I think he could recover with the rest day and hopefully to get better from there on. And that is normally the case the first 24, 48 hours with some stitches. Claude, and the big question going about, is he suffering? What sort of shape is he in since his accident? But they're certainly to keeping it taking it very easily, and they're not putting anybody in the front here as we see. But they've got a man up there. They've got an excuse, I suppose, with Antonio Colon up there in the first group with Rasmussen. So they're going to gamble on that and play that card for the moment. But I think we might see some of the Astana Bite having to do some chasing a bit later on, and that will give us an indication how Vinokurov is feeling, of course.
There is Antonio Colon. The man ahead of him is Michael Rogers. His teammate Linus Gerdemann, after winning yesterday, took the white jersey, the yellow jersey at the stage. Good stuff. And he also helped the team get the most successful, well, they now lead the team competition, which is why they're wearing that yellow background number rather than the white background number, just to differentiate who is the best team. This is the first category climb over and done with for Michael Rasmussen. 15 points in the bag for the competition, and the Dane with Bernard Cole going over second, then Stefan Joubert. Money in the bank, so they say, for the mountains classification. This is the group of George Hincapie, the second group on the road. It's 1 minute and 17 seconds down, and then there's a further group behind them containing a lot of the former riders. Well, some are being picked up and some are being taken back. At the moment, it seems that the group behind this Hincapie group is another group that's come out of the peloton, including Mikel Astoloza. We saw him, Felix Cardenas and Pache Villa. We also saw them coming out. Carlos Barredo is the other rider who is going across. In fact, I thought for a minute it might be Gárate, but a bit tall for Gárate. Carlos Barredo, 3 Spaniards then, and a Colombian chasing down the Hincapie group. They're at 3 minutes and 38 seconds down on the Rasmussen group at the moment. Over the top of the Comé de Roselin. That's interesting. You don't see that very often. Well, you don't see it very often on our screens. Water available from the Aquarel motorcycles. They have a cooled, refrigerated little unit at the back, which they slot the Aquarel water into. Aquarel are the official water sponsor company of the Tour de France, and they slot them in the little holes, and then they can a rider can take them at any point. Any rider. It's not specific to any team. They're just there on these very, very hot sections for them to use. They're there for the entire Tour de France, in fact, but they get used a lot more on these hot mountain days. You'll see a lot more of it. However, they don't over-refrigerate them because, as Sean has pointed out for many times before, if you've got freezing cold water, the temptation, of course, is to drink it, but not maybe so good for you on a hot day.
Well, certainly not. Real cold water is not the best thing, because the body is so warm, and it can upset the stomach a bit. So not ice cold, certainly cool, but it's and it's the case. We hear a lot. When the weather is really warm, riders having problems with their stomach problems, and a lot of that is from drinking too much water and maybe drinking too cold water as well. But of course, also the isotonic drinks, some of them are quite difficult on the stomach as well. And in the mountain stages, when it's very warm, it's difficult to eat. And as you know, if you ride a bike in very warm conditions, it's always difficult to eat solids, and you're trying to drink more. And for that reason, the isotonic drinks are, taken a lot. But it does affect the stomach, and it's hard on the stomach at times. And with a number of days as well, if you keep on doing for quite a few days, well, it certainly takes its toll.
9 points for Arroyo, 8 for Rogers, 7 for Colomb. Lamavelle with 6, Hincapie with 5. This is the mopping up of the rest of the points for that first category climb over the top of the Comé de Roselin. Now the drop down towards the Haute Vie. We must mention just one notable absentee from the riders roster tomorrow will be Mark Cavendish, who started this morning. He was the Lanterne Rouge, the last man in the Tour de France. He's really been in the wars and suffered big style yesterday to get home with the other sprinters. He came home with Daniele Napolitano and Robbie McEwen, but I think suffering on his first tour, it's been very, very difficult for him, and deciding to go home today, and probably a wise move. He was involved in a crash on stage 1 when he collided with a spectator. Then he was crashed on stage 3. We went over the top of another rider, and then got involved in another crash on stage, I think, 6, when he managed to help mangle Tom Boonen's rear derailleur, and that formed a crash as well. Let's have a look at the polka dot jersey now with Mike back in Paris.
Yes, David, and just look how Michael Rasmussen has shot up the standings as a result of the 15 points that he gained there at the top of the Col de Roseland. All of a sudden, he is within 5 points now of Sylvain Chavanel, and with 2 more first category climbs to come, Chavanel not at the moment in contention for points. It looks to me a very good bet that Rasmussen will be in the polka dot jersey at the end of today's stage.
Yes, indeed. Looks rather ominous, doesn't it, for those people who want to cut Rasmussen down a little bit. So over the top of the Comé de Roseland are the rest of the riders. 5 minutes and 6 seconds down on the general classification, grabbing those newspapers, stuffing them up the inside of the jersey to keep the wind blast off the front of them. Remember, they've sweated so much, they're absolutely drenched. You get cold real quick going down somewhere like this, even if you only think it's for 10 minutes. All of a sudden it can really affect you, so you want to keep the temperature for the same reason, funny enough, as Sean was saying about taking ice cold drinks. You've got to keep a reasonable set of parameters for that core temperature to run in between. 5 minutes and 7 seconds then is the break. The most dangerous men in the breakaway at the front at the moment are Michael Rasmussen and Michael Rogers. Rogers, who was just over 4 minutes down on the general classification, and Rasmussen a little bit further down, but both very...
The way nach Bourg Saint-Maurice zu schützen, nicht bei jedem hat das geklappt. Da gibt es natürlich einige sehr fachkundige Zuschauer am Streckenrand, die sich extra mit den Zeitungen bewaffnet haben. Das sind nicht alles nur die Betreuer, die da das Papier anreichen.
Mittlerweile ist der kleine Ausreißversuch von Michael Rogers der Spitzengruppe offensichtlich beendet. Macht ja auch nicht wirklich Sinn für den Australier, sich da jetzt alleine abzusetzen. Es geht fast 19 Kilometer lang hinab ins Tal. Das fährt man doch besser in der Gruppe, denn in der Gruppe ist man auch bergab eigentlich immer schneller unterwegs als allein.
Die Zeiten, die Sie gerade eingeblendet sahen, das war die Zeit für den Anstieg hinauf zum Comé de Roseland. Da lagen die Spitzenfahrer nicht weit weg vom Hauptfeld. Das wird sich nachher natürlich beim Schlussanstieg nach Tignes ändern. Vor allem dann, wenn sich ein Gruppetto gebildet hat, wenn alle sicher sind, wir werden innerhalb des Zeitlimits heute das Ziel erreichen.
Bernhard Kohl, der hat sicherlich schon einiges an Kräften heute investiert in seiner Alleinfahrt im unteren Teil des Anstieges. Michael Rogers dagegen, der hat sich eher noch zurückgehalten. Ist taktisch jetzt natürlich in einer ausgezeichneten Position. Rund 5 Minuten vor den meisten Fahrern, die sich für die Gesamtwertung interessieren. Die Frage ist nur, wie lange wird es der Australier schaffen, einem Michael Rasmussen hinterher zu fahren, wenn der einer der beiden nächsten Steigungen wirklich ernst macht. So, jetzt also Lampre an der Spitze des Hauptfeldes, auch Predictor Lotto, die Teamkollegen Cadel Evans, dem Australier, haben wir da in den vorderen Positionen erblicken können. T-Mobile hat sich jetzt entweder gewollt oder ungewollt aus der Nachführarbeit verabschiedet. Wir blicken wieder auf die Verfolgergruppe um Jens Vogt. Um Christophe Moreau, der hatte es ja zwischenzeitlich gemeinsam mit Antonio Colom ja schon geschafft, zu Bernhard Kohl aufzuschließen. Dann wurde das Tempo im letzten Abschnitt des Anstieges aber offensichtlich zu hoch für den Franzosen. Er jetzt also auch zurückgefallen in die Gruppe um Vogt und Hinkeby.
Ja, Moreau, den Sie erkennen in diesem grünen Trikot, dessen Radsportkarriere fast schon vor dem Ausstand. Bei einer Etappe der 4 Tage von Dünkirchen zog er sich eine schwere Verletzung zu durch ein Pedal. Sehnen und Muskeln waren durchrissen, durchtrennt. Und der erste Befund des Arztes in einem kleinen Krankenhaus war, Sie werden nie wieder richtig laufen können. Jens Vogt war bei dieser Diagnose übrigens mit dabei.
Cavendish, you know, it's a different situation. He's a real sprinter, and if you start doing that, well, then you lose your you know, that speed you've got, that's the flexible muscles as they call it, and you know, your speed in the sprint goes, and then you cannot win sprints, and maybe you never become a great climber. So, you know, why should he do that? I think his future is in winning stages, and if you look back over the years, the Cipollini's, the Patakis, the McEwens, all of those. If you look at the career they've had, and if Cavendish can get, you know, anywhere near that and win stages in the Tour de France, Tour of Italy, and win big sprints, well, then he's a fabulous career ahead of him, and he doesn't have to start changing, you know, to try to become a climber whatsoever.
Yeah, you end up being worse at both really than other people. So stick to what you're good at, really. So Mark Cavendish, 22 years of age, he's had a difficult run, hasn't he? I mean, it's not been an easy debut.
No, certainly not. Well, of course, in this tour, you know, he's been, you know, so unlucky right from the beginning. The first road stage, we see the problem, you know, with the spectator. He touched the spectator and just fell at the wrong time. And if it had been a couple of kilometres earlier, he'd have been in that group with McEwen and got back into the bunch. And, you know, it could have changed his whole tour. Maybe he could have, you know, battled there or got a top 3 places. And I went on from there. And then again in Ghent, of course, he came in that big pile up once again. So it's just you know, a really bad start for him. He could not have had a worse start in the tour, and it's a pity for everybody. And I was looking forward to see as well if he could get a good run and see how he would fare out against, you know, the Bonans, the McEwens, the Zabels, for example. And I think he would have been, you know, up there, but to win a stage, would he be fast enough to do that? That is the question nobody can answer now, and we'll have to wait another year or wait another time to when he's up against these big guys. And as we talked about in the Tour of France as well, the sprints are that bit more contested, and, you know, in the final run in the last 15-20 k's are that much faster. And I think, you know, Cavendish will have taken a lot out of this tour as well. He'd have gained experience, and that's very important. And of course, he's so young. He have a huge amount of great years ahead of him, and he have plenty of good years, hopefully.
Oh my word! And a crash.
Arroyo.
Is that Arroyo? Oh my word, David Arroyo and Rogers as well. Michael Rogers and David Arroyo trying to get away on the descent, and they've run into the barrier. They've run wide on that descent, and oh, that's nasty. It possibly is even worse for Michael Rogers than David Arroyo. Arroyo's got some sort of greenery down there I know he's gone down the slope, but may have cushioned his fall a little bit. I think that Michael Rogers has run straight into that timber barrier. That's a disaster for Rogers. The car is there very quickly. We've had questions about these cars. We'll talk to you about them in just a minute. Arroyo on his way. Has Rogers gone? I think he probably has.
And the Rogers, of course, seemed to go just wide and left it run very much straight and just into the timber barrier, and took Arroyo with him. And we see Gobert coming behind. He had to brake quite heavily, but just left the bike run straight and then turned at the last moment. Knocked down your speed, of course.
It's the first one we've seen like that, running very wide. And David Arroyo and Michael Rogers got caught up in that. Now, we had a question about how do they get the cars between the peloton and the breakaway riders and so on. How many cars do they have? Well, they've certainly a number 1 and 2 car here, and the number 2 car is back, further back with the peloton. The number 1 car is up with the breakaway riders, or it could be the other way around. It depends. They have one rider up with they have one car up with the breakaway riders, and they have one further back. In this case, it would have been the number 1 car. Michael Rogers, their number 1 contender for the GC, up in the break. He would have been, the cars would have been just behind from the team. So Case Stepania would have had a car there. T-Mobile had a car there. Straight away, you could see they were immediately on the ball. And this is the remnants of the group, minus Arroyo and Rogers. La Marvelle at the back. There is Arroyo, fine climber. And not such a bad descender. He's not super quick, but he's not such a bad descender. And unfortunately, Rogers, the one that seemed to be just made a little bit of a mistake running wide there.
Yes, well, it seemed to be Rogers that, you know, just took him with him as such. And if you have, if you're in the wheel of the rider, and you know, Arroyo was probably pretty much, you know, pretty close to Rogers. And if he goes straight, well, he kind of carries you with him, and that was the case, I think, for Arroyo. And you know, Rogers, when he hit the barriers, Arroyo just went straight on and straight over the barriers, and I think he's come out, you know, quite well, because he doesn't seem to have any major injuries, and it could have been a much more worse one.
Yeah, it could have been a lot worse. A lot worse. There's the AG2R car, of course, because Goubert is up in this breakaway. Thank you very much for Point Break Zanti on the message board, saying, "Hi, I'm watching from my summer bar in Greece. Great coverage. I also had a bar in Tignes. Could you just pop over and see if it's all right for me?" No, we're a bit busy at the moment, but thanks anyway. Maybe we'll, depends how many beers you buy us, I guess, to do it, is the answer to that one. And Balland at the front of the peloton at the moment, descending faster than the rest of them from Lampre. It's beginning to stretch out, might come back together towards the end. Vasseur just behind him. 156 at the back. There is Alexander Krajinski, the big Belarusian who we saw in breaks in the first week. They're just taking it easy, and a good job too. We've already seen somebody coming a bit of a cropper. So Michael Rogers, no pictures of him. We don't know how fast he's descending now. We don't know if he's trying to get back on that group. We don't know if he's any more injured. We saw David Arroyo, who I think has probably a little bit better landing than Michael Rogers over the top of the bars, and you can see why it's a dangerous descent when it's quick, can't you? And there's still the Hauteville to come as well. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back very shortly. Don't...
Ganz interessant, die Fahrer aus der Lampre-Mannschaft in dieser Rennphase vorne vertreten zu sehen. Denn sie haben ja mit Pachi Vila noch einen Fahrer, der sich zwischen dem Hauptfeld der Spitze befindet. Und daneben gibt es eigentlich Slowenen Tadej Valjavec nur noch überhaupt einen Fahrer aus dieser Mannschaft, der sich Gedanken machen dürfte um die Gesamtwertung. Und mancher Profikollege hat sich gestern auch ein wenig verwundert gezeigt, dass Lampre in der Nachführarbeit für den Ausreißer Linus Gerdemann so aktiv war.
Dieser Blick geht zu Michael Rogers nach seinem Sturz, jetzt gleich hinter dem Teamwagen von Gerolsteiner. 2 Teamwagen sind ja im Feld, der vordere gesteuert von Christian Henn, also er unterstützt Bernhard Kohl in der Spitzengruppe, Hans-Michael Holzer dann hinter dem großen Feld. Und Christian Henn wird sicherlich Michael Rogers schon im Rückspiegel entdeckt haben, wird dann den Weg frei machen, damit der Australier wieder nach vorne fahren.
Der erste Eindruck auf jeden Fall, Michael Rogers nicht so schlimm in Mitleidenschaft gezogen, wie zum Beispiel ein Alexander Vinokurov vor wenigen Tagen.
Links unten sehen Sie schon die ersten Häuser von Bourg-Saint-Maurice. Dieser Ort, eine wichtige Kreuzung im Isère-Tal. Hier teilen sich die Wege. Hinauf geht's nach Val d'Isère bzw. auf Tignes ins heutige Ziel. Aber auch in die Skistationen von Les Arcs, hinüber nach Italien, über die nur im Sommer befahrbare Strecke, über den kleinen St. Bernhard-Pass. Viele Zuschauer hier in Bourg-Saint-Maurice. Ein Eldorado, nicht nur für Radsport, sondern auch für Wildwasserwettbewerbe.
Of bruising coming up at all. I've forgotten the rider. It was one of the Case de Pain riders in the Giro this year. Who was it? Xavier Thandio? I think it was actually Xavier Thandio. He toppled over sideways and managed to get a huge bruise on his right thigh. It came up like a rugby ball. It was massive. Well, Rogers has done well. They're not absolutely pegging it, these guys, at the moment. Stefan Goubert at the back here. Antonio Colom, Bernard Cole and Michael Rasmussen, because there's only 10 seconds between themselves and the chasing Michael Rogers at the moment. This then the next group, the George Hincapie group, containing Sergio Paulino as well from the Discovery Channel, Gorka Verdugo, and Cherucha from the Euskaltel squad, Jose Van Gutierrez, who was in the break yesterday and one of the instigators of the break today, and Jens Vogt from CSC. How does it look after that on the GPS, Mike?
Yes, well, after all the many twists and turns that we have seen, there's still some to come on the following 2 climbs we've got to go. You can see numbers 1, 2 and 3 are representing one, let me put it this way, the 4-man Rasmussen group, 2 almost underneath, the 2 chasers, Rogers and Arroyo, 3 the George Hincapie group. Okay, there's not a huge distance between all 3 of those as we zoom in even closer, and we've lost number 4 now as we've zoomed in, because number 4, there you go, you just spotted it there, which is the lead group chasing after all these guys, but I hesitate to call it the peloton, because the peloton itself has shattered into so many pieces behind them, David. It's one of those days, and they've still got 2 more major climbs to come.
It really is one of those days, isn't it? We expected it to all happen today, but the interesting thing is that there are half a dozen big favourites all still sitting together by the look of it. It hasn't really affected people like Vinokurov, Kloden, Cardell Evans, Valverde, Carpets, all looking at each other in the same group. And meanwhile, 2 of the not second string favourites, but 2 of the guys who are real dangers, Rasmussen and Michael Rogers, have been allowed to get up the road. Nobody else has started attacking each other in that group, and all the others in between are all good climbers or good rouleurs, or like Vogt and Hincapie, big strong men. Good sprinter roadmen like Christian Moretti, good climbers like Sergio Paulino there at the end. And that's the Case de Pain hand. I wonder if that in fact is medical assistance. It is for David Arroyo. A little bit easier to have a medical motorcycle today than it is to have a medical car. They will have the car further down, but the motorcycle to get up towards the front here, and a little bit of attention on the fingers for David Arroyo. That could have been very nasty indeed. A lot of you will remember people going over the barriers in the past. Manuel Mori last year went over the barriers. Was that the Giro he went over last year? I think it was, with along with one of the Panaria riders, and that straddled a steel Armco barrier, which didn't look very comfortable, I have to say. And you can remember way back in, was it 2000? I can't remember quite the year, when Jan Ulrich ran out of road whilst wearing the German champions jersey and fell down a little ravine like that. That's a problem for, that looks like Laipi, it is. And he's got a problem there with the drive train of his bicycle. The chain is just hanging loose there. The car's got to get to him as soon as possible because he's going to start losing time. This is one of the big guys. Somebody else at the side of the road as well. It's a fall, is it? Fall for one of the liquid gas riders. It's Charlie. I thought it may have looked a little bit like him, but Charlie Vigelius has, I think, run into somebody in the crowd. Oh my word, it's really all kicking off today. Action all over the place, and not the sort of action that many of the riders would like. Now, Leipheimer, this must be a bike change, surely. Or is it just a rear wheel? No, directly into a bike, and he knows it. Just take it easy. He's going to have to chase back on. Is anybody going to come and help him? This is the thing. Difficult time for Leipheimer.
It's not a good time, of course, but he worked it well. He kept on freewheeling. We could see him there. He wasn't able to pedal, whatever the problem. It seemed to be the front changer maybe was broken, and he wasn't able to turn the pedals at all. But just let the bike go, let it roll downhill, and not stop, and wait until the car come to you. And that way you lose, less seconds. And it's certainly, the way to do it, because if you stop on the descent, you lose that speed you've got, and to change your bike, let it go on, and then change a bit later. And also on the race radio we had coming over there that O'Grady also was after falling on the descent.
Well, everybody having trouble today. Charlie Vigelius on the ground. We'll bring you as much information as we can on Charlie as soon as we can. Now this is the mechanic is there doing a little work on the car, on the bike. It doesn't look like he's doing an awful lot of work. Got to be careful about that. He will have to be careful about that. The mechanic's going to have to lean out and look as though he's doing something fairly shortly, because they're not going to look kindly on that when they see the pictures.
No, it's a dangerous one because, he's taken for a long time as well, and we always see when a rider has a mechanical problem, even a puncture, they start, adjusting his rear brake, and the mechanic puts his hand out, leaves his hand on his back, but they were pushing him at an unbelievable rate. You could see the mechanic's hair, the way it was blowing. He must be certainly down 65k, 70k per hour maybe, and he's taken him back into the rear end of the car, so now he's just going to move his way up through, but not be surprised if, he gets a warning, certainly, if he doesn't get a time penalty, because it's been noticed, it's been aired in the communique a number of days actually, that this pushing, and when you're handing bottles to the riders were hanging on for too long, so the commissars were giving warnings about that. So would not be surprised maybe if there would be a penalty fine for Laipi.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. They have been quite strict on it. We saw actually Christian Moreau earlier taking bottles for a little bit longer than he should have been, so they're going to look at things today. Lamprecht on the front at the moment. Balan is second in line, doing their work, and Calzati from AG2R just making sure that they get back at the front as well, and those two are sharing the work. He doesn't want to come forward and do anything at all. This is the front group. Rogers is back in it, then so is Arroyo. Rasmussen, Cole, Rogers, Colom, Goubert, and Arroyo in that order. Taking the bottle, let's have a look at that scene. Now he takes it quite happily and easily, but Christian Moreau a bit earlier on was taking the bottles and almost getting a sort of hand-sling out of them for a little bit. Then he get another bottle and another bit of a hand-sling, and then the same with the gels. So there's two, they do it separately, bit by bit by bit, making sure they can get a bit of an advantage. But that was a big push for Levi Leipheimer. We're getting some sustenance on board David Arroyo back into the swing of things. It is amazing how these professionals, they just get back into the swing of things straight away, or as much as they can. This, in fact, is the second group. My apologies. I thought that was Arroyo for a minute, just taking some sustenance on board. But it's Gutierrez. Leipheimer's group. Leipheimer are down the back. And Hincapie up the front. This is Rogers. And Rogers dropped to the back of that leading group, having taken his turn up near the front. And he doesn't look very comfortable to me, Sean. I think that knee or leg is affecting him. He looks like he's got a nasty graze on the chin as well. Yes. Oh, look at this.
He looks to be losing a bit of ground, and of course he had to make the chase back down as well on the descent after falling, because we see the mechanic, he came along first of all with a wheel, and then he went back to his car. So I did not exactly see if he changed his bike, but certainly he had to make the effort to come back with Arroyo. But he's certainly starting to suffer now, and it's possibly as well that he bashed his knee, as you said, because he seemed to hit a good smack off the barriers.
Yeah, big smack. And Michael Rasmussen is attacked, and Colomb has gone with him. Bernard Cole, who was attacking over the last climb, the Comé de Roselin, seems to have been distanced. Colomb has just seemed to have paced himself so far. And who else has he got with him? Arroyo. Good riding by David Arroyo. So obviously he did get a bit of a stop to the landing. These three out by themselves now. Well, what sort of speed do you think these guys are averaging up here? What do you think Rasmussen is going at now, Sean? Everybody always asks these questions. What speed do they go up here?
Well, depend on the gradient of the climb, of course.
Of course.
And this climb is not really that steep in the beginning, so it's not a percentage like the previous, the Roseland, which was much steeper, much more of a gradient. I reckon Rasmussen is certainly doing he's doing 21, 22 miles an hour at the moment there, the way he's moving along.
That puts it in perspective, doesn't it? I think the last person to ask us that said I did a 13-mile-an-hour average on my entire tour. And he's doing 20-21. The other question we get all the time is what gearing are they using? And a lot of people coming up with the buzzwords of the moment, triple chainring or compact chainring. Nobody at all in the peloton is using a triple. There's simply no need for it for these guys. They're that strong and that fit, and the gradient is nowhere near steep enough to use a triple. And in fact, nobody's using a compact either. They're just using 53, 39, and probably somewhere between an 11 and 25 if they're not great climbers, 26 if they're not great climbers, are spread on the back. And in fact, today when we were coming up the final ascent of the Mont de Tignes, there were a lot of people riding the course for the first time. They stopped them about 150 meters from the end and just funneled them off so that the finish straight can be left for caravan and so on coming through. And people were riding up there, including those guys from Doncaster Wheel, as we mentioned earlier, and also Andrew Tinsley we saw, and Cozzy as well from the On Impact squad. They'd ridden up today, but none of those guys using some guys out there using triples for just if they're doing it for fun, but really not very many at all. Most of them using a 39 or maybe a 36 if they're a little bit less strong, and riding up here in or with a double chain set. The last climb of the day is just long. It's a reasonable gradient. It's about an average of 5.5%. It does ramp up at a couple of places, and there's one section which is a tiny section of 12%, but that's about it. It's just long. 3 long power climbs today. 2 minutes and 7 to the chasers, and then 3:43 back to the peloton proper. 3 men out ahead at the moment then. Arroyo, Rasmussen and Colomb, and then there's a group of 3 following. Michael Rogers, Stefan Goubert and Bernard Cole. And then a gap back of 2 minutes and 9 to Gutierrez, Vogt, Chiruca, Verdugo, Lemavelle, Hincapie and Sergio Paulino. Then there's another group of pursuing riders just off the back of that, and then the peloton. The peloton at the moment 3 minutes and 35 seconds back, as you can see.
And we're just hearing that the yellow jersey is also struggling to stay in contact with the main group. He's starting to lose a bit of ground, and you can see why, because the pace being set by the lampreys, and it looked like Benati on the front actually who was setting the pace, and he's certainly setting a very fast pace. We can see the bunch here stretched out very much and almost in one line on a climb, which is a rare thing. You have to be going at a very, very fast rate, and riders having problems following here, as we see Federico from the Boyk Telecom team just slowly starting to lose contact, and the wheel in front of you going away ever so slowly.
Well, more statistics coming up from Mike in Paris, but Henry in Preston asking, the UK asking the question, as a new cycling fan, has there ever been a Tour de France with no breakaways in it at all? I don't know, actually. I really don't know the answer to that. It's an interesting question. I'd have to find out. I very much doubt it. Mike.
Yeah, I doubt it too, David. Listen to this. This is an amazing statistic. We have 3 pure mountain stages in the Tour de France this year. We had yesterday, today and tomorrow in the Alps, and then we've got stages 14, 15, 16 coming up next week, of course. Now, every day we go on these mountain stages, the percentage gradient gets harder and harder and harder. Yesterday, average gradient of all the major climbs was 5.2%. Today, 5.4%. Tomorrow, 6.5%. It gets worse. When we get to the Pyrenees, and particularly up to Plateau de Bay, it goes up to an average of 6.8%. The following day to Loudonvier, 6.9%. And just in case the riders think they're having it easy, the final day, stage 16, which is going to be absolutely horrendous when we go to Gárate, 7.1%. That's average gradient, David. Think what the steep bits are. The organisers of this year's tour, those guys who go out a year or so before and plan the route, I think they have been absolutely devilish this year. Ouch.
I think something like to say to that. Do you know, I did an awful lot of cycling over the winter. I was doing about 250 to 350 miles a week over the winter from last September onwards with all the boys from the Melton Olympic. And I hope they're all well now I've moved. And I came here thinking, do you know, I'm an awful lot fitter. I'd love to have a go at some of these big climbs. I think I'm taking that idea back again now. I mean, Andrei Kosheshkin sitting about 3 or 4 back there. It still looks like Benati on the front, the man better known for sprinting. There's Christian Knaes still hanging in there, number 185, and there is the yellow jersey. Right in the middle of this group are Linus Gerdemann. He has Fabian Wegmann, the German champion, next to him. Gerdemann, who took the yellow jersey yesterday in his first Tour de France on a lone win, the first breakaway to succeed in this year's Tour de France. Suffering a little bit today. I'm not surprised. It's been very difficult for everybody today, especially for a young rider like Gerdemann. He also took the white jersey for the leader in the Best Young Riders competition and the Combativity Prize, which means he gets the red on the back. Here is Michael Rogers. I think he's lost the other 2 people he had with him as well. Well, they're falling like flies. Accidents befalling all the major, a lot of the major contenders already, Sean, and we've not got halfway through the Tour de France here.
Well, certainly there's a lot of riders who have had problems even before the mountains when you look at the Astana guys, and you know, in the earlier part of the race as well, the sprinters, a lot of them having problems. So certainly crashes has done a lot of damage in this race before the mountains, and it's continuing as we see here. Rogers, he certainly seems to be suffering. We can see, you know, his face there. I think he really bashed his knee off the barriers, as we said, and it looks like that he's suffering big time, but he's battling away at it, and interesting to see, is he you know, chasing alone behind our 3 leaders, or is he after being dropped by the other 2 riders that were with him? That is the question at the moment, but certainly he is, you know, digging in there and trying to hang on and trying to limit his losses. But up front, as we can see, Rasmussen really, you know, just turning on the pace, and if he can get over the top of this climb, I think he can move into the leader in the classement of the mountain, and so he's definitely going to, you know, keep on going for this one, because it's his day, and you know, it's in his terrain, the first day in that, and he's going to, you know, make hay while the sun shines.
Absolutely, and I don't blame him. Michael Rogers on his giant carbon there, his TCR carbon. Connor from Northern Ireland listening to us and writing in on www.eurosport.yahoo.com saying thanks for the coverage. Thank you very much. Last time I went up to the Alps, I took my beloved Concorde, made out of Columbus steel, exactly the same sort of bike as Sean might have ridden with PDM, and I got up to the Grand-Bornand, and all the young guys on their super stiff carbon expensive frames laughed at me. Can you stand up for me and make me feel better? I'll tell you what, Connor, I bet I know who was more comfortable going down fast, and it wasn't the carbon bikes. Nothing wrong with steel, young man. Certainly isn't as stiff as the carbon. You think the Concorde was stiff, you should try riding some of these now. And that's what, of course, makes it a little bit more difficult to get the balance right for descending and for rough rides, because they are very, very stiff. Oh, Michael Rogers is in agony. Oh, my word. I wonder if Michael Rogers, what's going through Michael's head now? Is he thinking, is this the end of my chances?
Well, there's a problem, you see. He did not take the bottle with his right hand, and that tells you he reached over his left hand, so he's also suffering there. Of course, we see on his knee, but I did not see his elbow, but certainly he seemed to be suffering with that, and when he's not able to take the bottle, it must be quite sore.
It almost looked as though he might have had a wrist problem as well, because he was just dangling his hand there as well. Oh, dear. So, Andreas Klöden has a cracked coccyx. Alexander Vinokurov there, still digging in, puffing and blowing like we don't normally see him, and trying to hang in there. Has stitches in both knees. You can see they're fairly heavily bandaged, although the big tubular bandages have come off at the moment, and elbow problems as well.
And you can see Vinokurov, the way he's pedaling there.
Yes, absolutely.
Is, very high. And if you're suffering, that is a difficult thing to do. You're inclined to, roll a bigger gear when you're starting to suffer, or when you're suffering on the climbs. And it's certainly not the case there. And the question is, and the question going about the past 2 days, the Astana team, Vinokurov, Klöden, are they really suffering? I doubt if Klöden is suffering that much.
No.
Vinokurov possibly in the last day, but I think it's getting better. And it looks to be, he looks to be better there, but looks a bit more comfortable than he was certainly 2 days ago.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of sandbagging going on, especially from Klöden at the moment. We shall have to see. But he hasn't looked to be in any trouble at all. Vino possibly a little bit more uncomfortable than anything else. But if you looked at him compared to, say, Tadej Valjevec, who's just ahead of him, who's turning in huge gear compared to Vinokurov. And Vinokurov uses that little gear to just jump away and attack whenever he wants. These are the three guys up at the front then. Rasmussen setting the pace. Colom and Arroyo could only follow at the moment. And Michael Rasmussen, twice a winner of the Mountains classification jersey. They call him the Chicken. Somebody actually wrote in saying that the reason he's called the Chicken is because he was named after a cartoon character. He had two friends. One was called the Bear and the other one was called the Duck or something, or the Goose. But as far as I understand it, it's because he looks like a chicken. Michael Rogers, oh dear. What do you do in this sort of situation, Sean? What goes through your head, and how do you have to collect yourself together?
Well, you just keep on working at it, and of course, if you feel as if something broken, it's hard to keep the morale and hard to keep working on it. But you always, hope that when you struggle on and try and get in, and of course, when it happens on a mountain stage, it's really difficult, to limit your losses. You're going to lose time, and it looks like Rogers, the way he's moving at the moment on this final climb of the day, he's definitely going to have major problems staying with the other favourites, and it's really hard on the morale. And if you feel you have broke something, well, you just try and limit your losses and see when you get in at the end of the day what is the problem. And you're always hoping for the best, that maybe it's only a bruise, or maybe just a shock off the barriers or off the road, whatever the case may be. But certainly on a mountain day, it's very hard to to get through without losing quite a lot of time, possibly.
And that's a face of pain, isn't it, for Michael Rogers? Oh, yeah, right arm, I think. Definitely he's got a problem with the right arm. It seems to be able to shift gears, but hanging that arm down just then. And there's nothing you can do except just try and go on as long as possible. Oh dear. What a catalogue of injuries there has been so far this year. Not just to the big overall favourites as Pachivila gets onto the front now, with Calzati in his wheel. Not just to the big favourites, but also some of the sprinting favourites as well. We've seen, I mean, Mark Cavendish really was tipped to do very well indeed, especially in the stage into Canterbury. He was very motivated for it, and I think involved in about 3 crashes.
And Robbie McEwen, of course, the crash that he was in the first day, we thought that it was going to be curtains for him because he was, holding his wrist, and it looked like he had done, quite a bit of damage. But it was only just a bruise, and it was okay the next day. But since that crash, we haven't seen him really perform well at all. So, and we haven't been hearing a lot about it. But he seemed to be okay. But certainly, like. The sprint on day 1, the first road stage, is such a magnificent sprint, and he's been a long ways off ever since.
35.4 kilometers still to go. 4 minutes and 25 seconds is the gap. Mike has some statistics back in Paris.
Yes, as ever, this time we're looking at debutants and how they are faring so far in this particular Tour de France. And remember, David, that we've got an amazing number of debutants in the Tour this year, something like 30% of the entire field when we started in London. Well, Gerdemann, of course, making his debut after his great day yesterday. He is in the best possible place. He's number 1. He's got the yellow jersey. Everybody knows that. But let's have a look at some of the others. Soler from Colombia, who's riding for Bala World, he's in 5th place, and Gusov, who was the earlier holder of the white jersey for the best young rider before Gerdemann took it over yesterday, he's in 7th place. Thomas Dekker 10th, Florencio 30th, Cole 36th, and so it goes on. Incidentally, David, just before I hand back to you, you mentioned the Melton Olympic a little earlier. Well, I've got a friend who comes from that neck of the woods, Melton Mowbray, called Mike Dyson. I'm sure you know he markets the Ozzo product, and I don't know whether you know this, but it's Mike's 71st birthday today, as we have another look at that pile-up again. It was particularly nasty, and I just wanted to say happy birthday to Mike Dyson. So there, I've said it.
There you go. Happy birthday, Mike. Happy 71st. I should get back and ride with those guys. They did great things for me last year. Michael Rogers back past the second group now. This is looking like a disaster for another of the big favourites. Oh, what must be going through his head now? So, Alexander Vinokurov has been on the deck. Both knees sewn up overnight after his crash on stage 5. Andreas Klöden also on stage 5, crashing. Separate incident. And now Michael Rogers here on stage 8, colliding with one of the barriers. And David Arroyo here got the better of it. He was involved in the crash and went straight over the top of the barriers into the vegetation, down the ravine a little bit. Did you ever have any crashes like that, Sean, where you just ran out of road?
Yes, certainly had too many of them, and that crash there actually reminded me of one I had in Switzerland, in the Tour of Switzerland one year. I was a little bit behind the group on quite a big climb, over the top, about 35 seconds behind of a group of about 10 or 12 riders, and started to chase, and came to a corner with too much speed, much too fast, and just left it run on, and I knew I was going to be in problems to get around, and braked as much as I could and left it go wide, and there was a wall about 2'6", 3 foot high, and I smacked up at the side of the wall and just went flying over the wall and over the top. And luckily enough, as we see there with that crash, the vegetation, there was trees, because there was about 15 or 20 feet of a drop inside, and actually I just fell into the branches, and I fell down just so slowly until I just landed on the ground and had a problem climbing back up and got quite a gash in my leg. But if the trees had not been there, well, I think it would have come out much worse.
Yes, indeed. What do you think is the worst ravine incident you've ever seen? Somebody really being catapulted over? Historically, there have been people who've had terrible injuries, haven't they, that way?
Yes, well, we've seen some, really ones looking very, very dangerous and looking real bad, and they come out with, without anything majorly. We see Brunel going off one year in the Tour de France, and Of course, on the descent many years ago, we see O'Can and Joachim Agostino. They went off on a corner as well, and these ones looked very spectacular. But you know, a lot of the ones we do not see as well. You know, it's amazing how the riders come out. If you have a bit of runoff and if you have a bit of greenery, as you said, when you go over the barrier, or you know, just go off the side and you can, you know, land in the trees and the branches, well, it certainly softens your fall much more. And the big danger is if you go off and there's a drop where there's a lot of rockery, and that is the most dangerous.
Ivan Para of the Cofidis squad climbing reasonably well yesterday. Must have a problem because he is now abandoned. Another rider out, Para. Oh dear. There we are, look, confirmation. Ivan Para abandoning today. That's his teammate Christian Moretti. He's going all right. I think it was Roger Pignon, wasn't it, who did he crash very, very badly and break his back? I can't remember, the long time ago. But historically there have been some very, very nasty crashes. And Luis Ocaña as well, of course, crashing in the Tour, but in the most appalling weather conditions. And that was the end of his tour. He did win the Tour de France once, but he was really trying to take the fight to the great Eddie Merckx, and descending in the most atrocious conditions. If you've ever seen any film archive of that particular year, mid-70s, early 70s, something like that, in black and white, he just went careering off the road. It was pelting down with rain, and I think it was another rider who came in behind him that hit him that really gave him the injuries. But there have been some nasty ones descending. But when a good descender is good, they are a joy to watch. Sean Yates, Discovery Channel Director Sportif, who I had a quick hello to this morning, was a great descender. Britain's Brian Robinson, the Yorkshireman, saying, oh, another group. This is the main group now, coming back up to Michael Rogers. Oh dear, that's very, very sad news for Rogers. Brian Robinson saying in a video clip that I was doing recently that he originally in his first Tour de France saw some really great descending, and he decided to latch onto them, and that was the day that he decided he was going to be a descender, and a very good one he was too.
And we just see Andreas Kloden there as they went by the T-Mobile car. He was giving the director of sport teams in the car, Brian Holm, in the T-Mobile car. He gave him a squirt of water, and he seems to be, you know, quite happy there in the group. So certainly Kloden not suffering at the moment, because if you are hanging on the group there and just suffering to hang in, you certainly would not be able to do that. So that's a good sign that Kloden is not suffering at the moment.
Yeah, he was grinning and joking with the other people in there, and I wonder if he'd seen Michael Rogers coming up there.
And we see Axel Merckx there talking to Rogers. And I presume he's saying to him, well, will I wait with you? What do I do? Do I go on? And he's just continued on, and that tells us that Rogers, it's looking very unlikely that he's going to make the finish here today.
Yep, that looks very bad to me. Michael Rogers is just grinding inexorably towards a halt. Oh dear. I hesitate to say it, but it's not going to be long, I think, because Dr. Port looks at his arm. Whether, well, he's asking about everything, I think.
Collarbone he's looking at.
Collarbone?
Yes, certainly.
Is he?
He's looking at his collarbone there at the moment. And that is the difficult thing we see. We've seen it so many times this week when riders falling, and in the feeding station as well. The amazing thing, we see two riders, I think, break their collarbones. Barlow World rider and a Cofidis rider, and you know, with getting mosettes in their wheels and just coming down very heavily and breaking collarbones. But it looks like that, yes, Rogers, Dr. Port working on his collarbone there at the moment.
Yeah. Up front then, Michael Rasmussen with Antonio Colom in his wheel, and still David Arroyo pedaling. He was involved in that crash as well, but came off okay in the end. Rasmussen setting a decent pace here, 4 minutes and 47 seconds back to the peloton. just coming through with Pachi Villa at the front, and all the big favourites still just sitting in there. Evans was sitting there behind, I think it was Dario Cioni just in front of him. Slightly lopsided helmet he's wearing today is Cadel Evans. Vinokurov and Kloden both sitting in there. Kloden laughing and joking with his teammates, ironically, as they just passed Michael Rogers, one of the other big favourites, going backwards at a rapid rate of knots. I think he's going for the stage victory as well today, Michael Rasmussen. I think he's keeping the pace high, and he's going to kick again.
Well, certainly he's looking very impressive here at the moment, and of course, you know, he's the one who's really, you know, working at it certainly 100%, and the other riders are just following at the moment. And as we can see, you know, they're not taking much of a pull on the front. And of course, for Rasmussen on the final climb, we must remember the double points. And I was reading an interview in L'Equipe, the French paper. He was saying the double points on the final mountain is really not a good thing. He said it shouldn't be. Because it really doesn't, you know, give the incentive for the riders to go on the attack and a long ways out, because you know, you can take a mountain prize, but then if you're not able to stay up there in the finish and take some points, well, you know, the other riders actually get double points. So he said it's not a good thing for them to make the race very active and make it an attacking race.
Yeah,
but he's certainly doing that at the moment.
Well, isn't he just? Villa on the front. Rasmussen setting the pace up the front ahead for people to try and chase down. 5 kilometers of agony still for Michael Rogers to get to the top of this climb, and there's still another to go. And the peloton have swept by him, or should we say, well, yes, the bunch have swept by him, including all those favourites that he was trying to lose today. Cuts and abrasions all to the right side of his face and his chin there. We can't see, there's nothing on the right elbow, something on the inside of the left elbow, but as Sean was pointing out, collarbone being looked at by Dr. Port. I mean, if you cracked your collarbone, or if it is possible to soldier on, but it ain't very nice, is it?
No, certainly not. It can be very painful, but sometimes, and from experience, because I did it a few times, and there was one of the occasions when I broke it, I continued on for quite a while to the finish, but it was broken. And other times there was no way I could continue on. I just had to, you know, stay on the roadside, get in the ambulance, because the pain was so much I just could not get back on the bike. So it varies. Sometimes it can be so painful, and other times, you know, you can feel a bit of niggling there, and you think maybe it's just you drag the ligaments a little bit, but you know, you have to wait for the x-ray, of course. But certainly Roger's suffering big time, and when you feel that, when it's really hurting big time, it's not a good indication.
Not at all. The gap still increasing. 5 minutes now and 10 seconds with 30 kilometers still to go until this finish today. We're finishing at the Mont de Tignes. We'll drop down from the Monte de Hauteville into the bottom of the valley. And that's Saint-Foy, and then back straight up the other side. It's a long, steady-ish climb today, and the polka dot jersey as it stood earlier today with Sylvain Chavanel at 5 minutes and 9 seconds at the moment, which goes to show that there's not really a huge amount going on within the peloton. Linus Gerdemann still sitting in there with the yellow jersey. Rasmussen starting the day at 4 minutes and 42 seconds. So at the moment, he is in the yellow jersey position. Arroyo starting at 4:44. He will move up the general classification. And believe you me, he's going to get an awful lot of support when they get down in the Pyrenees. He's David Arroyo. A little bit disappointing in the Giro d'Italia for him. He had 2 good weeks and began to fade towards the back end of the last week, and he is a very good climber. They are now on Hauteville, the top of the Hauteville. Remember, they've still got to drop down. Sweeping descent, and then back up the other side. What now for Michael Rogers, Sean? Back again next year if he can't soldier on this time around, but triple world time trial champion, trying to turn himself into a big tour rider. It's taken him 2 or 3 years to do so already. There's Brian Holm in the car, just looking a little concerned. It's taken him 2 or 3 years to even get to be a tour contender. big disaster, really.
Yes, well, it's a big disaster, and as Rogers, he prepared really for the Tour this year with that in view, and you know, just a crash and everything is over. As we see him here, he's pulling over, he's about to stop, so as we said, it looks like that he's going to, you know, get off his bike here, and the question is now, is he going to, you know, certainly, yes.
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah.
Definitely looks like he's going to stop.
Yeah, disaster. Oh, poor old Michael Rogers. He knows his Tour de France is over, and I get the feeling he knew that was over as soon as these guys came past him.
And of course, when he was visited by the doctor, Dr. Port there, we could see him work on his collarbone, and I think you know, he would have given an indication if the collarbone was broke, as we can see here. Some of the team people looking at it from the team mobile.
Off the bike then for Michael Rogers, receiving the applause of his team. He looked to be in the sort of situation in the pound seat, so to speak, for T-Mobile. Was looking strong. He'd gone with Michael Rasmussen when he came up to him, and shed the rest of the breakaway group, except for the very good climbers, Coloma and Arroyo. And that's a very difficult time for the Australians. So our first really big name retirement. Michael Rogers climbs in the car on the slopes of Montorville, about 5k from the top. In the second of our Alpine days, a crash depriving him of a tilt at a podium and possibly more, as he collides with a wooden barrier running wide on a corner. David Arroyo, the man in that 3 there, coming off better. Well, that is our first big retirement of this year's Tour de France. Well, this is the second big group on the road. Bernard Cole has managed to try and have another dig out of the front of this again. This is Gutierrez, Vogt, Goubert, Chiruca, Verdugo, Lemavelle, Hincapié, Sergio Paulino and Christian Moreni, you can see right at the back there. Well, 2 withdrawals in today for T-Mobile. How fortunes can change in cycling. Yesterday we had Linus Gerdemann, one of their new young riders, taking the yellow jersey, the white jersey, the combativity prize, winning the stage into Le Grand-Bornand, and the very next day, with the yellow jersey within their team and their team, the best team placing, their star rider is involved in a collision with the barrier and pulls out of the Tour de France, and their star sprinter, the young Mark Cavendish, abandons after a torrid first week. What a fickle sport cycling can be. That gap is still going out, Sean. They're definitely going to go for that big win up at the last climb of the day. The favourites seem content to let them do so, and is that a wise move with a rider of the calibre of Rasmussen ahead?
Well, certainly, you know, you have to look at the situation out front, and of course, Rabobank, you know, they're not going to do anything here in the group. They're just going to wait and leave things happen, because they have another abandoned Burkhardt from T-Mobile.
From T-Mobile, they're dropping like flies here.
Yes, so certainly, you know, the Rogers, he's in a, you know, sorry, not Rogers, Rasmussen, in a magnificent position. He's, you know, taking the King of the Mountains points, and it looks like he will be leader in that classement now, because Chabanel is not in he's not in the group which is following on the road, so he's not going to take any points, and he's also the stage victory and the yellow jersey. Of course, he can take the leadership here today, depending on what happened, you know, later on. If he can keep on going at the rate 5:57, the last time check, it's going to be, you know, difficult to pull him back, because he's going so strong at the moment, and it's really the T-Mobile team are working at the moment. But of course, you know, they've lost some men, and it's going to be difficult for him to keep this one or to pull it back. So it looks more and more like that the 3 leaders out front are just going to go on, and if they can, certainly Rasmussen looks very impressive at the moment.
He does, incredibly impressive, doesn't he? Brian Holmes going to be juggling a whole lot of things in the T-Mobile car, because he had Marcus Burkhardt just abandoning, Michael Rogers, their star rider, is just abandoned. They got the yellow jersey. Are they going to try and protect it or not? They seem to be doing something at the front about it at the moment, but all the rest of the favourites quite happy to just let them do it.
Yes, well, the surprising one is that, as I mentioned earlier, the Predictor Lotto team, because I think there was, some time ago, there were certainly a number of them in there, and I'd be surprised if they're not some teammates with Cat 11s, and, you know, they are the team who should be riding, because certainly he's going to lose out here if he allow Rogers, you know, I keep on saying Rogers, Rasmussen to take, you know, to take that sort of advantage, and it's difficult to pull back that amount of time, you know, 5 minutes and 57 seconds the last time check. Now we see 6:11 back to the yellow jersey group, so it's growing all the time. And Astan as well, of course, although they have a man up front, they're going to play that card, you know, leave him up there and you know, see how he'll fare out in the final climb, Colombe. So, you know, you can excuse them for not working, but certainly Predictor Lotto I would have been expecting to, you know, show at least one man on the front with the T-Mobile riders at this moment.
I think it's a dangerous move to let Rasmussen get any more time than he's already got. He may not be the world's greatest time trialist, but we've still got some big mountains to come. He may just have a quote rest in some of the mountains and stay together with the big favourites, but if he goes on the attack again and gets away, as his strength can allow him to do, he can get another minute here, another half a minute there, another 2 minutes here. It's that's going to be difficult for anybody to pull back, regardless of their time trialing abilities.
Yes, well, it certainly is. You know, it's going to be a big tax to pull back that 6 minutes. But of course, Rasmussen, you know, he has sometimes he has a bad day and he loses a bit of time. And if you look back through his performance over the years, he's had that. But I think it's the waiting game now. Who is going to chase? Because, you know, AG2R with Moreau as well. You know, they have a rider out in the second group, Goubert. So they're playing that card. They're, you know, saying, well, we've got a man up there, we cannot chase. But now we see that Astana guys coming to the front, and I'm not surprised, because they certainly have to, you know, take this gap down somewhat, because it's getting into a real danger time, going out to 6.25 minutes almost.
Yeah, too much. Definitely. There's Jaroslav Popovic taking on board some liquid. Salvodelli was the man taking 2 Musettes for the Astana squad. It's being shared around now. Vinokurov just undoing the front of his jersey to try and keep himself a little bit cooler. Sergei Ivanov at the front. 1, 2, 3, 4 of the Astana riders now to the fore, and they must start chopping down this gap a little bit. If you're just joining us as they run down the descent of the Orville, which is not easy, by the way, we haven't seen the front guys yet. You can see the road surface. It narrows quite drastically, and it's very twisting and turning, and some nasty little broken bits of tarmac as well. Michael Rogers is out of this year's Tour de France, possibly a collarbone injury, definitely something to do with his upper right body, shoulder, collarbone, something like that. Sean quite good at these sort of things, having been in the peloton for so long, but it looks as though it might be a collarbone. He collided with one of those wooden barriers. You can see them on the right-hand side on the descent of the first of the big climbs of the day, the Colmé de Rosalin, and took David Arroyo with him. Arroyo catapulted over the top and into the greenery, which seemed to help him, but Rogers hitting things very hard indeed.
And that is the problem, as we mentioned a number of days ago, when you run out of road and you hit something solid, a barrier, a car, the wall. It's the most dangerous one, and we just spoke about that. I think it was maybe yesterday or 2 days ago.
Before, yeah. If you're following us for the first time, this is one of the most open Tour de France in many, many years, and it's turning out to be a real humdinger.
Gefährlich. Die Abfahrt ist ja auch nicht komplett immer nur bergab. Fahrerfeld wird so in 1-2 Kilometern an eine kleine Kreuzung kommen, dann geht es mal für einen halben Kilometer ein bisschen bergauf und dann beginnt der schwierige Teil, der gefährliche Teil der Abfahrt so richtig.
sorgt fürs Tempo. Hinten leuchtet das gelbe Trikot von Linus Gerdemann. So etwa an 10. Position.
Ja,
Wegmann mit dabei.
4 Minuten 44, das ist die magische Zahl des heutigen Tages. So sieht es bisher aus.
Die Spitzengruppe hat das Ende der Abfahrt bereits erreicht und sofort geht es in den Gegenanstieg. Und
wieder ein Sturz. Wir haben es gesagt, ein Mann von der CSC-Mannschaft ist da betroffen. Schauen wir mal, ob wir in dieser Einstellung die Nummer erkennen können. Leider nein. Aber Stuart O'Grady ist bereits ausgeschieden aus der CSC-Mannschaft und jetzt noch ein weiterer Fahrer betroffen. Und das hat sicherlich richtig wehgetan, denn das Tempo sehr hoch an dieser Stelle.
Es waren eben zwei Zahlen zu erkennen, die vielleicht für etwas Verwirrung sorgen. 18 Kilometer noch bis zum Sommet, also bis zur nächsten Bergwertung. 20 Kilometer aber noch bis ins Ziel. Das ist kein Widerspruch, denn die Bergwertung in Tignes liegt eben 2 Kilometer vor der Zielankunft im Val Claret. Dort also werden die Punkte fürs Bergtrikot verteilt. Doppelte Punktzahl. Das ist immer so bei einer Bergankunft. Sollte es oben eine Bergprämie geben, dann doppelte Punktzahl. Das heißt, 30 Punkte warten auf den Sieger oben in Tignes.
Sollte alles im Rennen so bleiben, wie es ist, dann käme Michael Rasmussen in eine ähnliche Situation wie Linus Gerdemann nach der Etappe gestern. Der war ja sowohl der Träger des gelben...
That work it out for you. We make it, and this is very provisional, of course, that Michael Rasmussen is now in the lead with Chavanel behind him by 10 points, and De La Fuente and Gerdemann, the hero of yesterday, on equal third place with 30 points. And it certainly looks as though Rasmussen is going to be a force with which to be reckoned. He looks certain to get more points on the final climb, maybe take the stage, maybe take yellow as well. Looks like it's going to be a Rasmussen day today.
Yeah, it does indeed, doesn't it? Not Iñigo Quest today. He wasn't going very well yesterday, and he seems to have had his share of misfortunes today. That's not so good for Carlos Sastre. Sastre needs help if he possibly can, and Iñigo Quest not going so well. A little bit of a touch by the CSC mechanic, and he was going to have to be looked at by the doctor as well. He's carrying a lot of road gum and grime on that left arm, and we'll just have to see what there is under that. Always painful. The road rash is very painful indeed, isn't it, Sean?
It certainly is, and it depends on, of course, you know, the rate you're going when you go down, and if you slide for a long time, it can be, you know, a very good burden. And as you know, when you get really bad burden, it takes longer to heal, of course. And but the most dangerous is, you know, we see the riders falling today. When you fall down, you can break something, and if that happens, well, then it's almost impossible to go on. At least with road rash, you can continue on. It's going to be sore for the first 2 days, but then after that, normally it gets better. And in the case of Vinokurov, he was so lucky because when he crashed, they were going at a very, very rapid pace in that final of the stage into the last 25 kilometers, and they were probably traveling at 55 km/h. And when you fall at that speed, well, it's very easy to break something. So, you know, I think he came out, considering the speed they were going, he came out pretty good, although he got a lot of stitches in both knees and the elbow. And again, that's going to be a sore thing for the first 24-48 hours, but certainly Vina looks to be better now, and the Astana is going to take it up here to limit this gap a bit, because it's certainly grown out to be something which is getting a bit dangerous to allow Rasmussen to continue on. So I think it will come back, and we could see a lot of attacks in this final climb up here to Tignes, because I think the favourites, they have a lot of not shown anything, and Moreau, for example, maybe hasn't got the team, and it's certainly too early for a rider to start attacking because much too far out. But I think on the final climb with a mountaintop finish, if one of the big favourites is feeling good, they will certainly go in the attack today, and not just to maybe, you know, to pull back time on Rasmussen, but also to check the other big favourites to see how they're feeling, because they haven't really tested each other as yet.
No, they're all just sitting there looking at each other, aren't they? Rasmussen has 5:53 over the peloton at the moment. They've got 18 kilometres to go. And the last climb of the day is a steady one. Feeding is which is coming over race radio. They're allowing feed until 15k from the finish, so you're allowed to take bottles up to 15k before the finish. They've Normally it's 20k, but it's a hot day now, and David Arroyo looks like he's having a bit of trouble there. Yes, he is. He's obviously having a bit of trouble hanging onto the back of Rasmussen and Colom at the moment. He was involved in that crash. There's a T-Mobile fan we've just passed who's got the biggest hair I've ever seen. Huge big afro, blonde afro at that, sticking out. We saw him earlier on the side of the road. A lot of people have cycled up this climb today to Tignes to experience it for themselves. It is an average of about 5.5% in terms of gradient, so not a super steep one, but when you put the hammer down, it's very difficult to follow. And that's what Rasmussen is doing, and I'm sure you're right, Sean, that the big favourites, when they arrive at this point, they're going to look at each other and somebody's going to have a go.
Yes, and we see Rasmussen, he's dropping Colom at the moment, so, and Arroyo are also in difficulty. That's definitely going to have a bearing on what's going to happen within the big favourites as well. And if Arroyo was staying up there with Rasmussen, for example, from the case to Pang team, well then the likes of Valverde, for example, might not attack. He might wait and just allow maybe to go for the stage victory for Arroyo. But if he's not able to follow Rasmussen and Rasmussen goes out on his own, we could see some the incentive there for the other favourites to attack, because they haven't got a teammate up there with a chance of taking victory. It will change the tactics in a lot of the teams now.
It certainly will. Let us just recap on what has happened today. Stefan Schumacher of Gerolstein was the man who launched the big break of the day, and then 19 riders joined it. Not this man, incidentally, but Colom was in there, and Arroyo. There we go, Christophe Moreau, as predicted. Sietsu is passed. Sietsu, the Belarusian, who had 10 seconds of gap, and Christophe Moreau has gone on the attack. Moreau, the Frenchman, there's a huge amount of cheering here at the finish line and lots of clapping as they watch the big screen. And Moreau, the French favourite, he is the French road champion. He's 4 minutes and 15 seconds down on the GC, has now gone for it. He's just won the Dauphiné Libéré. And how long will all the other favourites look at each other and let that man go up the road?
Well, that is the question, and 17k's to go, of course, quite a bit out, and it depends if the Astana riders keep setting a very strong pace and just hold Moreau or allow Moreau just to get away very slowly. The other big favourites might wait for a while, so it depends on Astana what way they can continue on the pace and how many of them can stay on the front from the Astana team. That is the big question, and that will also decide how long Moreau will be allowed to stay out in front. But we see some action in the bunch already.
Yeah, definitely. They're not allowing it. They're not having it at all. It looks like Vino's who's launched something, is it? No,
Mayo.
it's Kasheshkin. Mayo, Valverde, Kasheshkin, Karel Evans coming up to the shoulder of Andrei Kasheshkin. Ivan Mayo, who's put the hammer down. He's seen that the gauntlet has been thrown down by the big Frenchman, who's got now Stefan Goubert with him. Goubert was in the break earlier, and Mayo has got behind him, and Mayo will be going, Moreau will be going, oh, right, okay. I wondered how long it was going to be.
Now we will see the big favourites, who's got it and who's going to be in trouble, and the gap opening very quickly, and surprising that we haven't seen a bit more action, because Kashishkin, of course, it's surprising we haven't seen Clausen and Vino reacting here, because this is a dangerous one. You have quite a few of the favourites up there, and if they start riding together, well, then it's going to be majorly difficult to catch them back.
It looks like Vladimir Karpets, who's suffering as well now. Carlos Barredo was with him, suffering. And let's just look out for the bandages on knees for a start. Is that Claudin that just gone past there? Now let's look back. 103. Right in front of us there is Alexander Bocharov, the smallest man in the peloton. Here is Alexander Vinokurov with Andreas Claudin right behind him, being paced by Paolo Salvoldelli. And the yellow jersey of Linus Gerdemann is in this group as well. You can see Levi Leipheimer is back up here, safe and sound. Michael Bogart and Denis Menchov just behind. Jaroslav Popovic will be in here. I can see Tadej Valjevec, the Slovenian champion, just sitting there still in the saddle. The pace being set fierce on the front now of this little group by Paolo Salvoldelli. Moreau hitting the front again, giving it another dig. Iban Mayo's not going to let him go. Valverde is there. Kasheshkin is there. Cat Elevens is there. Another rider's trying to come across. Looks like Alberto Contador is trying to get onto the back of Cat Elevens. The young Spaniard who won Paris-Nice. He's been touted as a great rider of the future. Kasheshkin, a man I've tipped for the top 3 this year, still there. Sitting behind Valverde. They're all looking behind to see who's coming across. Moreau doesn't want to have any of it. And I think probably rightly, Sean, there's no good looking over your shoulder. If he's going to attack, he's going to test people. He's going to push just a little bit to see who can stay there.
Yes, well, Moreau is very active, and you know, just throwing in little attacks, certainly not giving it his 100%, but just throwing in these attacks and just having a look around to see who's responding, who's in trouble, and I think he's just testing it for the moment. But certainly the surprising one is that Vino and Claudian did not react, and you know, when you go on the attack like that on a climb, well, you have to make a big effort out of the saddle, and if you're suffering a bit, and as Claudian was saying, you know, he's suffering with that injury, that could be the reason. And just follow the train set by a teammate is a good one, as we see Mayo going into the attack here, and certainly things really heating up here at the moment.
This is Mayo's trademark, getting out of the saddle, just dancing up the hills. Moreau's looking at him, wondering if he's just freewheeling in the moment. Who's going to take up the chase, he's thinking. Not going for it himself at the moment. Iban Mayo has gone off the front. He's got Michael Rasmussen, David Arroyo and Antonio Colom further up the hill. Mayo is 4 minutes and 26 seconds down on the general classification. And the thing that's always dogged Mayo's career is consistency. He's never really been consistent. He's had wonderful victories, beautiful victories to watch, most especially in the Dauphiné Libéré when he hammered Lance Armstrong, and then came to the Tour de France and was nowhere. Last year, Iban Mayo, was it last year or the year before? Do you remember he was having a swing at the motorcycle cameraman because they were.
Yes, it certainly was last year in the Pyrenees. The cameraman stayed with him for a long time, and he was getting very vexed because he would not go away. And actually, I think the team excused themselves for the behaviour of Mayo after that to the television cameraman. Yes, because he was so annoyed. I mean, they were chronicling his last leg, so to speak. And we see in the peloton there, our yellow jersey is still hanging in there very well. Gerdemann, you know, doing a very good job today. I'm surprised that he's lasting so long. I said to myself, after the effort yesterday, that huge long breakaway and the effort he gave in the final, I thought he would pay the price pretty early today. So he's doing a very good job at the moment, hanging in for so long. It is a very good job indeed. This is Iban Mayo, a pure climber of real ability and talent, when he can be allowed to do so, and looking comfortable, Sean, very comfortable. It's never easy, but certainly looking in good shape at the moment. This is the group that are a little further back from Mayo. Looks like Popo's got up to the front at the moment, gone across. Contador, I think, is the third man in line, that wiry figure. Schleck in position there from the CSC team. Well, he's got across to that group as well then, and then back down to the chasing Alexander Vinokurov and Andres Claudian, still being pushed on by Paolo Salvoldelli, super domestique that he is. Not many teams can boast a double Giro winner as a domestique. Tadej Valjevets looking very cool there, just behind the Astana men. I think he's a real dark horse, is Valjevets. So strong and can climb very well. He could do well. Leipheimer in this group as well. There you can see him, Leipheimer right in the center of your screen. Dennis Menchov is right behind him. And then behind those, Christopher Horner of the Predictor Lotto squad. And this has hurt these guys. I think this has really hurt. This is a little dig that Moreau's had, and there's some big favourites got across to them. It's hurt the Astana boys. It certainly has, and the gap 20 seconds at the moment. We see our shots there. We could see the two groups, and it looked like that they were much closer, but over race rate at the moment we're getting 20 seconds in advantage, as we see Rasmussen still, you know, very impressive out front, walking away and out on his own at the moment. So it's going to be a battle now, and it will be interesting to see Mayo how well he will continue on out front. If he's strong enough, will he be able to take much time back on Rasmussen? So it's going to be a time trial between the two of them for the moment, but I think we can see more attacks from the Moreau group because there's quite a few of the big favourites there, and then I think they would have felt that the Astana boys are suffering a bit, and I think we could see some of them, testing it again and going in the attack in the final, certainly 5 or 6k.
This is the group that was instigated by Christophe Moreau, the largest of those men there. When you see him, he's about 6 foot tall, and of course he looks huge compared to the other guys on the bike. But he passed us yesterday as we were finishing our dinner. He was off to do something, I think at the AG2R bus, and we just exchanged hellos and things. But he's, like all these guys, super lean. I mean, you would never say he was big if you stood next to him. You would say he's positively skinny normally. But he's got quite a big frame to lug up these mountains, isn't he, Sean? And look at the bigger effort coming in on the front by Popo there.
Yes, certainly, and that's the advantage up here, that we have 2 from the Discovery Channel, and Popovic, of course, he's going to ride for Contador here, because if he can get Contador within reach of the riders out front, or 2 leaders, we know the way he can finish in that final 5 or 6 Ks. He's so explosive and he's such a great climber, and over 4 or 5 Ks he can go so fast because he's really one of the natural climbers.
Yeah, an absolutely natural climber. But as we were saying about this particular climb, it is a real power climb. It's a nice steady gradient, even if it is uphill all the way. It's just long. Just a couple of questions we have time for while the things are settled in these groups at the moment. Can they take their helmets off anymore? No, they can't. For a couple of years now, they've not been allowed to take helmets off in a climb whatsoever. So they have to keep them on. Another question we had, what happens to team cars or any of the following cars when they get to the finish? Well, there's a diversion about 200 meters from the end. They get diverted off as arrows. They have to go that way, and the riders can take the last 200 meters or so by themselves. If you watch, especially the flatter stages, you'll see them doing that. They dart off to the left or the right. They are specifically told to go that way. And in fact, it has, on occasions, it has affected the course of a race. I think it was there's been a number of occasions when riders have followed the diversions, haven't they, Sean, and not actually gone the way they're supposed to do.
Yes, well, there's the famous one which we all remember, Robert Miller. It was in the Pyrenees, actually, if I remember rightly, and he was directed into the diversion of the cars, and he missed an occasion to have a great stage victory on that day, because he was certainly, just a couple of 100 meters on the line, and mistake by the commissaires or by the police at the diversion.
I can't remember, but I have a feeling that David Mackenzie's victory in the Giro was similar. But I may be wrong, and I may be doing David a disservice there. Christophe Moreau looking at the other guys saying, come on, get together, let's get a wheel going. Through and off, let's get this going. Want to stay away from the favourites, and Kasheshkin looks like he's having a little trouble hanging onto that wheel there. That surprises me. Popo looking over his shoulder to see where they are. Jensvoort being passed, and still Paolo Salvaldelli is doing a great job there, but he's not closing the gap down quick enough, I think, for Vino and Claudin.
No, well, he's holding it well. It is growing a little bit, but still he's doing a magnificent job, because up front we see them and they're riding up front, and it's not one of those climbs where it's really steep and we don't see them sharing the pace on the front. They are doing that. We see Valverde coming off the front here and Moreau taking over as they catch up with Mayo. So it's one of these climbs where it's not that big major steepness, so you can change on the front and help to work together. So it's a good job by Salvadelli, really, because he's been on the front now all the time on his own. But surprising that Vino Corra for Cloden are not getting overexcited at the moment. But they have got Kasheshkin out there, of course, as well. So it'll be interesting to see, will they try and come across the gap on their own, or will Salvadelli be able to close it down, which I doubt very much if he'll be able to do that on his own. So we could see some attacks maybe from Vinokurov yet.
Yes, if he's got the legs, if he's got enough. Not so much in the tank, but if it's just not taking it out of him in the crash. And Moreau is keen to make this work with Cadel Evans with him. He's keen to make it continue on at a reasonable pace. Frank Schleck going up onto his shoulder and having a look around as well. Evans is moving up. Contador just sitting there nice and comfortable at the moment, spinning very high cadence. And still Paolo is beginning to, I think, suffer at the front. I'm not surprised the amount of work he's been doing. He's been dragging everybody up.
And this is a section where they have it's quite a bit of headwind. We're looking at that on the way up today earlier on, and up to the point where you get to about 5k's to go, 6k's to go. There's certainly quite a strong headwind in the valley, and then you turn a bit and it's not as much, but certainly the point where they are at the moment, there's certainly quite a bit of headwind. If it hasn't changed, and it looks very like it hasn't. They seem to be, you know, riding together here, and the way they're riding on the front, it looks like there's still that headwind in the valley at the moment.
It's pretty much a constant route all the way up, as we see Linus Gerdemann. His day in yellow has been pretty well, pretty accomplished, I think. He's done very well. He's got the Franz Kobo on his shoulder from Sonia Deval. A couple of tunnels for these guys to go through. We may lose them for a second as they come out the other side. Then they go past Lac de Tignes, through Tignes itself, where they'll be absolutely packed. We noticed the Dutch halfway up. The Dutch are already in full party mode. They come to the Alps every year, especially the Alps more than the Pyrenees, which tends to be taken over by the Basques. And they are in full beer drinking party mode halfway up at the moment. Going past Lac de Tignes, after Tignes village itself, they go on towards Le Grand-Bornand at the top here at the ski station, and everybody awaiting their arrival. There are thousands upon thousands of people lining the barriers either side. Christophe Moreau, French national champion, winner of the Dauphiné Libéré. All in the space of the last month. Surely one of his best shots at a high overall position in many, many years. The French have looked for him for such a long time. Started really as a time trial specialist, won a prologue here back in 2001, I think it was. And has developed into a very fine climber. And he's gone again. He's just turning the screw. He hasn't really even got out of the... Well, he may have got out of the saddle and got back into it. It looks like Valverde is the rider who's gone with him. Moreau going again. Well, that's a sign that Moreau is a real danger man this year, because if Valverde is prepared to go straight across to him, he must worry.
Yes, well, of course, Valverde, he can do that very well on a climb. He's, you know, that explosive one. He can just give that sudden burst, and he's able to, you know, follow the riders who go in the attack. But you have to have the good legs, of course, and we can see here Schleck trying to crawl his way back on slowly, but Moreau certainly very active. And before the attack of Moreau there, we see they were riding together, but nobody giving 100%. They're going through there. Some riders, of course, are missing their turns at the front. Kashishkin not prepared to walk, which is normal, but we see Popovic here losing contact at the moment, so it's going to change things, because he was riding certainly for Contador and giving it everything, but Moreau very active, and as we were saying, you know, what will he do in this tour? And he looks to be, you know, in very good shape today, certainly.
It's one of the big problems, isn't it, maintaining your form after such a good win. And so the Dauphiné Libéré was seen as a tune-up, but there is always the danger that that it is going to drop off. It could take just as few as 2 weeks for your very finest form to disappear. Michael Rasmussen under the 10 to go barrier. And Rasmussen out by himself, certainly going for the stage victory. Christophe Moreau is the man who's the big favourites, who's launched the attack. Arroyo is just a little bit behind and trying to close up on Rasmussen.
Yes, well, he's in between, and I think the last time check I held around 120 he was behind Rasmussen, so he's quite a bit ahead of this group of Moreau at the moment. As we see, they're all trying to come back into the wheel of Moreau and Valverde, but having difficulties. We see Cadel Evans there doing a bit on the front, but Kashishkin going to go across there now, and everybody suffering here quite a lot. We can see the movement on the bike certainly close to being at 100% at the moment, and interesting to see when we go back to his main bunch of Claude and Vigno Korov.
This is it. This is the bunch.
Yes, Savadelli has gone from the front.
He has. Well, they've all gone from the front. It's Michael Bogart now taking up the challenge to work on the front. Vladimir Karpets has managed to get back in and is moving back up towards the top. He's got Konstantin Suetsu with him. There's Christopher Horner just passing him now. There is Alexander Vinokurov, and right ahead of him
Moreau again goes in the attack.
Oh, look at this, and Contador seems to be going with him. And we said who's looking the freshest. Actually, I'm surprised Cadel Evans has gone straight across there, because he looked to me as though he was suffering. Mind you, the way he rides a bike, his position on a bike, he always looks as though he's a little bit more suffering than other people.
Impossible to know.
Yep, absolutely. Well, this is wonderful stuff. Who's going to go again? And looks like Iban Mayo's going to go straight through the middle again and have another dig. There's Didi the Devil on the left-hand side. We had a little bit of a question about him. Is he still around? There he is. Mayo goes. This time, Moreau has managed to just about go with him. Cash is going to have to chase once again. And off the back at the moment, it looks like, is it Frank Schleck who's suffering a weeny bit? And Cadel Evans. They're still just testing each other. It's bang, 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 attack, and then just slow down and attack and slow down.
Well, it's certainly one of these climbs, as we said, it's not a steep climb, and with the headwind there as well, it's you know, it's really difficult. If you're riding on the front, you have to put in a huge effort, and of course everybody in your wheel is getting a much easier ride. They're sparing so much energy, where on a really steep climb, when you're in the wheel of a rider, you know, what you gain by sitting in the wheel is very, very little. So that's the reason we see they're attacking, and when there's somebody in the wheel, they're just sitting up and just pulling over, and you know, it's just continuing on in that way. But it's interesting to see now down if the Rabobanks can really work well, and Bogart we see on the front there, because to close this one down, it's going to be really difficult for them, for the group of Cloden and Vinokurov.
Valverde, Moreau, they're all looking at each other. Moreau is keen to just keep it rolling. Now Cadel Evans is just moving up onto the rear wheel of Frank Schleck. Again, Moreau is more than a little rolling, actually. He's just pushing those pedals just a weeny bit harder in the saddle. Still Astana sending men to the front to try and push. Is that Maxim Oglinski? I think it is, who's trying to keep it going, but he's a big gear turner. He's not a huge climber.
And Vino at 1 minute 4 seconds behind this group of Mayo and Valverde.
Great ride by this young man, Linus Gerdemann. Managed to hang in there. And as yet, none of those riders have tried herring off after Vino and after Valverde and Iban Mayo, and the gap is getting a little bit big to start doing that now. 4 minutes and 18 seconds back to the Moreau group, 5:25 back to the yellow jersey group, and it's this man here, Michael Rasmussen, at the moment, who's leading everybody up this final climb of the day. Moreau, he's definitely looking, watching, trying to push it along, playing a canny game, making sure somebody else has to come through and do something, testing them a weeny bit.
Yes, well, they're all trying to test each other, and Moreau is the one who is doing the most. We've seen him going the attack, you know, quite a few times here. So certainly he's, you know, feeling very strong here, and trying to, you know, keep this one, keep it active, keep the pace up, and trying to get the guys to, you know, keep on working. But at the moment they're not working, and they do not want to come through to do that bit on the front. He starts to attack him again, and but the gap well over a minute ahead of Vinokurov at this moment. So they're doing quite well, and it will be interesting to see if Vino and Claude, you know, will react in the last number of kilometres.
Frank Schleck to the front now, Valverde in his wheel. Moreau dropping right down to the back, forcing somebody else to do some work. We saw this in the Giro d'Italia this May, when Danilo Di Luca had a whole number of riders with him, and he was cajoling them, forcing them, looking at them, pushing the pace on a little bit, then dropping back, making other people do the work for him. Right at the back here is Kim Kirken, the Luxembourger.
Karpets,
White, yes. Levi Leipheimer in the middle, Konstantin Suetsu on the left-hand side. Juan Jose Cobo is in here. 2:04. That's an interesting inclusion. I've got a lot of time for Cobo. I think he may go quite a long way. Valjevets sitting in third spot, just behind Denis Menchov. Menchov saying to him, like, come through and do some work. We need you to come through and do something now. Jens Vogt hanging on at the back there, which goes to show what sort of a climb it is, Sean. If it ramped up much more, people like Vogt would be straight off the back.
Yes, well, of course, it's one of these climbs that will suit Frank because it's not a steep one and it's a bigger gear one, and also the headwind is having a major effect on the speed up front, and that is the reason maybe Voigt is just hanging in there for the moment. It tells us that the speed is not that high, but the boys that are riding on the front, we see there Stan, a rider on the front there, he is, you know, riding, giving it 100%, but when you're in the wheel and you're backing the group there, well, then you can, you know, stay there with making that little bit more less effort.
Valverde just been passed on the right shoulder by Christophe Moreau, who now looks as though he's content to, for a moment, just take a little bit of a break, a little bit of a breather. My apologies, by the way, for saying Robert Miller was spelt with an E the other day. I don't know why on earth I did that. I know full well he spelt with an A. Ridiculous. He must have been on a day off somewhere. Michael Rasmussen, another great pure climber, out by himself now. Up towards this enormous dam. You can only see from the air, by the way. Very, very difficult to see it coming up here. And behind, Race Radio saying that behind Valverde is pushed ahead. He has, and he's got Moreau right on his wheel. Mayo is just coming up. Alberto Contador is the dark horse here. He's not done any of the pulling on the front at the moment. He's followed all the way. And I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't give it a big dig a little bit later on. Moreau is the one who's done most of the work. Valverde has reacted. Mayo has attacked a couple of times. Cadel Evans, well, he's done some turns on the front. Schleck has come across to this group and has been up towards the front, but not really done an awful lot yet. Evans, not usually known as an attacking rider. Kasheshkin, I think, he's bridged a couple of gaps when Moreau has gone, and has had to work pretty hard to do so, and I think he was suffering a little bit. But Alberto Contador seems to be fairly comfortable at the moment and has done nothing on the front.
No, he's certainly not. He's playing that waiting game, and well, if he's going for a state victory, he cannot wait much longer, because we see the 409 back to this Moreau group, and unless Rasmussen really, you know, tire in the end, it's going to be difficult to close him down. But of course, it's a headwind, and we see that big dam there where they turn a little bit to the right. From that point on, the headwind, as we see a shot here now with the riders going across it, at that point it's not as much of a headwind. When you go up into the valley here, it's a bit more sheltered, so I think we'll maybe see much more attacks. It'll not be as difficult as we've seen further down. When they go in the attack, we see the riders in the front, you know, having problems to keep it going, because the reason being, of course, a very strong headwind in the valley.
The biggest time gap of importance here is 1 minute roughly. It's 1 minute and 1 second actually between the Alejandro Valverde group and the group of the yellow jersey Linus Gerdemann, including the two Astana riders Vinokurov and Andreas Kloden, as they run through Tignes itself now. This is Michael Rasmussen. He's on the home stretch. There's a huge amount of applause for this man. I don't think there'll be a huge amount of surprise from a lot of the guys up here to see this man coming over the top first. The Dutch are out in force. Of course, he's a Dane, is Michael Rasmussen, but he's riding for the Dutch squad, Rabobank. 5 minutes back to the yellow jersey group, but still Moreau rolling it along at the pace he wants to, and the others all looking at each other. .4:15 back from Rasmussen to Moreau. Well, picture-in-picture at the top as Moreau goes again, and Valverde gets onto his wheel. But very briefly, Mike, how does it look on the GPS? You can see it there.
Yes, number 1 is, of course, Rasmussen. Number 2, the guys he was with earlier. number 3 is actually the group containing the ones you're looking at in your picture right now, with the French champion still on the front. And number 4 is the yellow jersey group. That's how it looks on GPS. Incidentally, very quickly, David, you were talking about that monster crash in your mind a little earlier. I think you were referring to the Roger Rivière one in 1960. That was the one.
Yes,
He'd finished 4th the year before, and he'd won the World Pursuit Championship for the 3rd time. Sadly, he broke his back, and he was never to ride a bike again.
Yes, Roger Rivière. I knew it was a Roger. I couldn't remember. Can you remember, Mike, which crash it was when one of the cars or one of the other cyclists, I think, had to tie their inner tubes together, or tie their spare tyres, tubs as they had them, together to form a rope to pull the rider out of a ravine?
Yes, that was going back even before my time, and that's a long time.
Yes, long time ago.
That was the day when they actually used to carry their spare tubulars crossways across the backs of their shoulders. If you look at old photographs, you'll see the riders doing that. And you're absolutely right, there was an instance, but that was way back when, possibly even before the Second World War it might have been. I'll do some work on that one.
1930s. Yeah, I don't have I just don't have the time at the moment, because it's just so exciting, and I wouldn't do it otherwise. This is the yellow jersey of Linus Gerdemann, and it's a long day for him in the yellow today, but I think he's defended the yellow jersey or ridden with great aplomb.
Yes, well, he certainly has, and I think a lot of people, and talking to people after the stage yesterday, you know, it was an unbelievable day for himself and the T-Mobile team, winning the stage, taking the jersey, and you know, he's hung in there very well, really, you know, dug in and stayed in there for a long time. I certainly did not expect him to hang in for this long, as we see him here.
Me neither.
You know, just starting to lose contact of the main, with the main group now, the group of Vino and Clothing.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to be there for that long either, but all credit to him. Chapeau for Linus Gerdemann, but you may notice the gap is coming down between Andrés Kloden, Vinokurov here, Denis Menchov, Tadej Valjevec, I think Gárate is in there as well. The CSC rider still in there, I'm not sure who it is. It could be Jens Vogt, but we shall have to see. No, it's Carlos Sastre, sorry, on the far right-hand side. Well, that's not so much of a surprise, I guess.
And Vogt is still at the rear?
I think he's gone off the rear, actually, but the gap is coming down between that group there and the group in front with Moreau. It's now about 35 seconds, 40 seconds, so they've cut it down by 20, and it's Kloden who's been doing the work on the front. The man at the head of the race, though, is Michael Rasmussen, the Dane, who's twice a Mountains jersey winner here in the Tour de France. You may remember last year he had his little baby on the podium in the polka dot jersey as well. 2:55 down to Arroyo. This is the man you're looking at. Good ride by him, especially as he's been off the bike once today. And the question is, Sean, I guess, is can Moreau and Party respond, because they will know that the other favourites are coming up to them fairly shortly.
Yes, well, they haven't been for a long time, as we can see. They're just attacking each other, and they're not really pulling at 100% together, certainly. And it's probably an occasion that they might regret, because you know, there's the opportunity to eliminate some of the very big favourites. If you look in the group, which was over a minute down, like you have Kloden, Karpets, Leibhammer, Menchov, Vinokurov, of course, Sastre. So, you know, this group up front, if they could pull better together and start working together, they could pull out maybe, you know, a minute and a half if they really got it together. But it's always a situation that some number of riders want to sit on the rear, and then the organisation just goes totally out the window.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happened, isn't it? Because Moreau's been trying to push it on. He's still looking over his shoulder to see if anybody's going to come and do anything. He's tried to get it to work together. He's tried to get them going, but it's not happened. It's down to 30 seconds now, the gap, and they're going to have to really motor on if they want to do something, because Andrés Kloden has been driving them on up the hill. It's going to take it out of Kloden. There's no doubt about it. And Vino slipped to about 3rd or 4th in the line, or was. No, he's moved up to 2nd again there with Menchov right behind. And these guys are now cutting that gap right down. As you said, Sean, they could have just taken advantage and wiped out some of the big favourites, or really put them into a difficult situation anyway. And look, it's now down to 20 seconds roughly. So he's doing a fabulous job, is Andrés Kloden here on the front. He's really motoring. and bringing all these other favourites back up to the Moreau group. Vino, Menchov, Sastre is in here. Kobo is still in here. Great ride by Juan Jose Kobo. Leipheimer, all still in there. Tadej Valjevets is in there. That's Jaime Zubeldia at the back. It's too far of a shot to tell exactly who it is.
We can see Ferrero there to the rear of the group.
Yes,
as well.
Indeed.
But certainly, sorry David, certainly a great ride by Cloden. He's been on the front now for a number of kilometres, and he's really just bridged, closed down this gap big time. And it looks like if they don't start to up it up front, well, they're going to get pulled back. As we see here, they're getting really close at the moment.
It's almost the battle of two strong men at the moment, isn't it? It's Cloden versus Moreau in an uphill time trial. One of them's because the others aren't prepared to come to the front and work, and both men are dragging their respective groups along.
Yes, well, the advantage for Cloden is, he's got Vinokurov on his wheel, and he's just going to ride there and concentrate on riding, where Moreau, he goes in the attack, he accelerates a bit, and then he starts looking around, he slows up, because he have too many big names in his wheel that are, not prepared to ride with him, as we see here again, looking about, where for Cloden it's a totally different situation, and we're getting a clearer picture now with the Astana team as well. Cloden said, I'm here to help Vino in this race, and he's certainly doing that today, and he said that Vino is the leader, and it looks very much like that at the moment.
It certainly does. Much to my surprise, I have to say, I thought they would come in with genuinely two leaders, and I thought that in fact Andreas Cloden was the man who was more likely to be the Tour stage leader than Alexander Vinokurov, but it seems not that way. I wonder how much politics have played into that. I wonder how much the fact that the Kazakh is in a team backed by the Kazakh national government, I wonder how much that plays into it.
And Arroyo, he's going to be caught by this group of Moreau. 42 seconds at the moment. So it looks like that he's going to be certainly reeled in by this group of Moreau, and it looks like Cloden and Vino is going to, possibly get back into this group also.
I'm not so sure, actually. I think that Moreau's put the hammer down here. And Contador has gone back from this group, and it's now stabilized at about 20 seconds. It got to about 20 seconds. Is it going to come down any more? It's definitely falling, but not so at not such quick a rate. And Leipheimer, the front end, Alberto Contador has come back to this group. Maybe he sees something better chances in this group than the other one, and maybe you're right, Sean. But Andreas Cloden right to the front. Well, where we go again. Alberto Contador, how peculiar. He went back to the other group, 20 seconds down. Now he's got to make all the ground up again and go past them. And the climber from Spain, who won Paris-Nice this year, has upped the gas. How peculiar.
Yes, it's an interesting one there, because he came back to that group. Did he have a mechanical problem? Was he asked to come back for Leipheimer?
Yeah, maybe he was.
And maybe Leipheimer not able to follow the pace being set by Cloden at the moment on the front of the group with Vinokurov. But certainly looks very strong there, and out of that group of Vinokurov strong, and seems to be going to come across maybe again to this group of Moreau.
Yeah, Leipheimer looked to be all right at one time. Maybe he had a chat with Leipheimer, and Leipheimer said, look, you go for this stage victory today. Vino is taking on the work at the front at the moment. Now Carlos Sastre has put a dig in. Sastre, who was given that role as leader yesterday, and Vino is beginning to Sastre has turned the screw on Vino, and Vino has just gone bang. Can you turn the screw on somebody and they go bang? I don't know, but mixing metaphors, it seems to work. And Alexander Vinokurov not responding to the pace of Sastre. Look at that, he's come straight up to the wheel of Alberto Contador with Denis Menchov behind him. These three now away from the group of Cloden, and he's got straight past Contador. That's a lovely, lovely move by the Spaniard. A man who in his professional career, if you looked at his palmarès, hasn't won that many races. I think there's probably only 2 or 3 in his whole career, but he's always been a huge contender. And look at Vino!
And Cloden is still setting the pace on the front, and he hasn't seen that Vino is just suffering and having problems staying in the wheel. He's a couple of metres off the rear of the group of Cloden.
Has he seen that, or is he just laying down a marker? Is he that worried about waiting? He is now. Maybe that'll send a warning message out to the Astana squad that Andreas Cloden is in fact the stronger of the two. Maybe just reading between the lines, he was staying out there for just that little bit longer, that few extra meters than perhaps he after he'd heard the call to come back, just to show that he can do it, and he should be doing it. How interesting. 2 kilometers to go then for our lead man, Michael Rasmussen. That is an interesting thing. Do you think he actually heard the call to go back, Sean, or is he likely to just want to show that he's a little bit stronger than people are giving him credit for in the team, or the team themselves saying, look, we'll just wait for a couple of seconds to see what happens?
No, I think it's just a situation you do not hear. Of course, on the climb here, maybe his earpieces maybe have pulled it out actually, and when you're on the limit as well, you know, as Cloden has been setting the pace there for nearly 4 kilometres, it's difficult to hear you know, the orders from the team manager, and you just continue on walking there. And Cloden, he did not realise that Vino was in problem, because when he looked around, I think he slowed up immediately, and you know, you just have to give him just that little second to get back into a wheel. And I think Cloden will continue on walking now with Vino Kurov and just try and limit the losses here. And the situation for Astana is, of course, there are 2 main men you know, in a position where it's a delicate one, and they have to, you know, they have to put someone in the front, and Cloden's the one, you know, who said he was going to do it. He certainly didn't do it today. And you know, you have a rider in front as well, Kashishkin. What do? Do you get him to wait? It's you know, it's a very quick calculation you have to make, and it's not easy even for the, you know, the best vector sportifs.
No, it's not easy. Ivan Mayo is giving a dig off the front of the Moreau group now by himself, and Moreau trying to respond to get back onto the wheel. We saw Karl Evans struggling there. Just before that, we saw the shot of Carlos Sastre and Denis Menchov, and Alberto Contador had gone away from the front again, so he is between this group and Carlos Sastre. Moreau still setting the pace on the front of that little group behind. But this man is, without doubt, the rider of the day. He's won the combativity prize. That's already been announced. Michael Rasmussen, who rode away from the peloton, and Cadel Evans coming to the front of this little group now. And Michael Rasmussen, who rode out of the peloton and across to the breakaway riders, and then rode on through them, taking with him Antonio Colom and David Arroyo and Michael Rogers. But at the time it was difficult. Oh, look again, Vino's gone off the back again. Cloden can't, surely he can't afford to wait. He must go. If he waits any longer, then both of their chances are going to start to be scuppered. This is, as Sean was saying, a very delicate situation for the Astana team, for Mark Beaver and all the staff there. They'd be scratching their heads going, what on earth do we do now? Michael Rasmussen, though, a fine victory in showing he is the greatest climber in the Tour once again, because he's going to come home and take not just the victory today, but the mountains classification jersey. And he started the day, remember, at 4:42 ahead of everybody. And we will have to see whether he can take the yellow jersey as well. It's a bit touch and go at the moment.
Well, I think it is. It's certainly going to be touch and go, but you know, what a magnificent ride, and first day in the mountains, a magnificent victory, and what a performance.
A mighty performance. Interestingly, we were talking about the cars being funneled off. They will be later on, but the lead car there and the Commissaire's car allowed to go through with Michael Rasmussen. Ivan Mayo has given that dig out of the front of the Christophe Moreau group, and Cadel Evans tried to stay with him and couldn't.
And Valverde is
gone
from this group.
Where is he? That's the first time we've seen an overhead shot of it, and where has he gone? How far back is Alexander Vinokurov now? If that camera just pans forward, we'll be able to see exactly what the gap is. Well, he's got Paolo Salvadelli back with him now, trying so hard to pace him up. Andreas Kloden has had to go. They've had to make the decision that they've got to salvage something, Astana, out of this, and Andreas Kloden has got to motor on, having done all the work. Ivan Mayo is going to come home second. And gave that real climber's kick to get away from the Moreau group. Moreau responded as best he could. He's taken the other riders with him, minus Alejandro Valverde, so all sorts of changes today. Valverde, who we thought might be there, Mayo, who's not showing the consistency, but could be brilliant on his day. Is Valverde getting onto the back here? It looks like it. But obviously suffering. It looks like a Case de Pang rider. And he's got onto the back of the column, of the wheel of Kasheshkin, sorry. Evans, Moreau, Schleck, Kasheshkin. And then Alejandro Valverde. And how far down is everybody else? How far down is Andreas Kloden as Ivan Mayo comes in? Over two, he's going to be 2.5 minutes down easily. Here comes Ivan Mayo along this long straight past our commentary boxes. That is where all the sportif riders, or the riders today who are riding this section, were funneled off. And there go the cars being ushered off to one side, as we were talking about earlier. Good ride by Ivan Mayo. 2:47 down. Here is the man who started the attacks of the favourites. It's Christophe Moreau, and Alejandro Valverde has gone off the front. He's using his little sprinting prowess to get there. Moreau is going to try and close that gap if he can, because every second counts now. Valverde. Moreau loses maybe a second. Here comes Alberto Contador, stuck in the middle. Behind him was Carlos Sastre and Denis Menchov, and they're not that far behind either. Menchov and Sastre, good work. Contador, well, a strange drop back to the
well, just hearing actually Contador had a puncture, which we didn't.
Oh, did he? No, we didn't see. We did not see that. Didn't hear it. Well done, Sean.
And Valverde, of course, taking the sprint, the bonification. Of course, he's going for that and taking that. What was it? 8 seconds of bonification.
Jaime Zubeldia, Levi Leipheimer, and Juan Jose Cobo finishing. 4 minutes down now. Where is the yellow jersey of Linus Gerdemann? It's still going to be a while till they get there. Manuel Beltran, the only man for Liquigas who has any pretensions of a high overall, and Oscar Pereiro.
And a good ride by Pereiro.
Super ride, really super. This is the group of Andreas Kloden, and is that Vino on his wheel again? He's got there. Been paced back up. And the two of them patting each other on the back. Well, I thought actually it was Salvadelli who had gone back to, or gone there to help him, but maybe Kloden had been forced to come back again. Here is the yellow jersey of Linus Gerdemann with Kim Kirchen just behind him, the Luxembourg, and Tadej Valjevets. That's a wonderful ride by Linus Gerdemann, trying desperately to defend that yellow jersey against a man of the class of Michael Rasmussen in the mountains. Very, very difficult indeed. 5 minutes and 6 seconds down on the winner for today, Michael Rasmussen. So this then is the result of the stage. Rasmussen from Mayo, Valverde, Moreau, Schleck, Evans, Kasheshkin, Contador, Menchoff and Sastre in that order. Valverde taking the final bonification points ahead of Christophe Moreau. Moreau worked very hard indeed, but just had to grind away at the front there. Rasmussen taking the victory and of course the double points for the finish today. 30 points in the mountains classification. He is firmly now ensconced within that mountains classification, the polka dot jersey, and that's really been his whole aim of coming here once again. But if you're a great climber and you can pull out such great big time gaps in the mountains, then well, it's even more than that, isn't it? If he can do that again one more time, he's well up with the chance of being on the podium once again. Well, let's see if we can pick up any of his interview.
Yeah, it's okay.
Michael, in English first. You've been working so hard for this for so long. Now you take the mountain jersey, the yellow jersey, and you take the States. What does this mean to you?
Whoa, I don't know. It's a little hard to find the words right now. Well, it's overwhelming. This is I don't know what to say, really. It's like a dream. It's a childhood dream. Yellow jersey is amazing in the tour. I don't know what to say.
You've been beating all the favorites. Do you focus on the yellow jersey right now?
Well, I think the way I'm riding, it would be stupid not to.
And then in Danish? Mikael, vores kommentatorer siger, at det her det som en
he's a man of few words. And but he says the right things, doesn't he? I mean, it'd be daft not to concentrate on the yellow jersey now.
Well, of course, it's, you know, he's in the yellow jersey at the moment, and the question is, you know, will he be consistent up? What way will the team, you know, will they ride for him? I think with the form he's got, well, I think you know, he's certainly up there with a chance, and certainly, as we talked about earlier, place on the podium, and that performance today, will he pay for that? Tomorrow, of course, rest day, so it'll give him a chance to recover from that big effort today. And the thing is, when you're in the yellow jersey, of course, he's going to be a marked man from now on, and can he hold on is the big question.
And of course the next day in the mountains, the day after the rest day, from Val d'Isère to Briançon, is absolutely huge. 2 out of category climbs to go over. He's got a rest day to get it all back together, then again so has everybody else. And we will just have to see. We go over the Col de l'Iseran, some 15 kilometers into the route. That could be somewhere where he could really just sit there and wait to see how everybody else is going. Maybe push the pace a little bit and see how everybody's going, because it goes straight into the Liseran, and it's such a great climber. There might be some people suffering with a climb that goes straight out of the start. And then of course we go over the Galibier later on, and then there's about 30k of rundown, isn't there, to Briançon on stage 9 after our rest day. Michael Rasmussen, is it a good day for him, or will he wait till the Pyrenees?
Well, I think, yes, he will wait until the stages where the mountaintop finishes. He's not going to go on a mountain where there's 20, 30 kilometres to go, even so on the descent, and certainly not in the earlier part of the stage. And that's where he can do a lot of damage, take time on the mountaintop finishes.
And what about his time trialling? That's what we have to ask, isn't it? There we are, here's the general classification. You already know he's in the yellow jersey. 43 seconds ahead of a very brave Linus Gerdemann. Iban Mayo moves up to 3rd overall.
And what a ride by Mayo. I think he's one of the men, could be a danger man, and could be the big surprise of this tour.
Maybe.